Board Finance.
Thank you.
Okay. I need to read the notification so we can do this as a Zoom. Can you increase the font? Is that possible? Oh, that's really good.
Anything.
On Thursday, March 12th, 2020, Governor Baker issued an order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20. That order was effective immediately until it is rescinded or the state of emergency is terminated. On February 12th, 2022, by the action of the legislature, the order was extended until July 15th, 2022. So we are going to be having a hybrid meeting this morning, this evening, so we can have remote participation. So let's do a call to order. For the members of the committee, Carl Balda.
Present.
Eric Beckerman.
Present.
Paul Connors.
Present.
Joe Reardon.
Here.
And Elizabeth Childs. Chair, I'm here. Okay. We have a four, in fact, we have a full committee. And I believe we do have some members of the Norfolk County Advisory Board on our Zoom call. We should just recognize who they are for us. Will you do that, Bill?
Barbara Searle from Wellesley, Treasurer Bellotti from
Okay.
Quincy, and that is all at the moment.
All right, welcome Wellesley and welcome Treasurer. Okay. We have just an hour tonight and I'm hopeful that we'll get done in time for everybody to have a chance for a stretch. The first item on the agenda is the vote on the proposed FY23 budget. This is our opportunity to really ask questions of Cronin and really be prepared to make a motion at the full advisory board meeting about the budget. So would you like to just give us a quick thumbnail of the changes from what we looked at and then give us a chance for conversation?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the easiest thing, Bill, to do is if you could share the PowerPoint that I prepared. It's very brief. As members of the Finance Committee will understand, the FY23 budget that you last saw in April has been modified. The county commissioners recently voted to endorse the Ripples Group report, which had the effect of consolidating certain IT services within the proposed FY23 budget. That's the last one, Bill.
No, you titled it.
Nope, down.
Down.
Right, down.
Ah.
There you go.
An old one.
All right, well, while he's doing that, I believe everybody's got a hard copy that we presented up front. Flash drive?
Doesn't look like it.
I just got that one.
Want to grab one for me too? I have a question.
We'll work from the hard copy. if you don't
Okay.
mind. And if you could source this from the version I noted the other day. I can do it. after
Yes,
this meeting.
thank you.
All right, fair enough. So, as folks know, we are on the May 11th meeting for the Finance Committee, according to our schedule for the budget development. Briefly, how do we balance this budget? We collaborated with the Finance Committee over the last several weeks. We discussed choices with the county commissioners, and we relied on a balance of policy goals, past funding levels, and assignment of costs where most appropriate. As I mentioned, the version that is before you this evening was voted upon recently by the county commissioners. This is known as version 5. So we've progressed through the development of this budget. It was developed to consolidate technology services under the Information Technology Department. This version was voted favorably by the county commission on May 4th, 2-to-1 vote. The version altered the proposed registry of deeds budget previously proposed on April 13th. It still maintains the maintenance of effort, projected to be 1.025 of spending per the treasurer's trial balance of February 28, 2022. This version funds an additional $233,293 from the deeds excise to offset the registry's indirect costs associated with this new IT services department. The proposal is relatively straightforward. The staff salaries from the commissioner's office and the registry of deeds were moved to this IT department within the budget, totaling $333,394.02. In addition, we are appropriating $46,800, or transferring, I should say, $46,800 from IT temp services from the Registry of Deeds budget. Non-salary expenses relative to technology services were transferred from the Registry of Deeds budget to this IT department, and that totaled $76,800. Furthermore, one other item to note, the salary of Commissioner's Office data processing manager was reclassified recently as a result of market-based public salary, skills, and experience. Note from the April 13 presentment that the overall budget has gone down, and this is in large part due to a couple of factors that came in. The Commissioner's Office, we had a budget to fund certain contractual services in FY22 that will not recur in FY23. That totaled $35,000. On the IT department side, we also had a program, you may remember, we appropriated $84,000 for asset tracking software. We are withdrawing that item at this time. Will not need it funded into FY23. So those savings reflect why the overall budget has decreased from the last time you saw it on April 13. And at this time, I'm happy to go through the budget with respect to the online version, if you'd like to, Dr. Child. That summarizes the basic changes that have been made as consolidations now reflected in what's known as version 5.
Would it be helpful to the committee if we went through the online budget, or would it be more helpful to jump right to questions?
I have a question.
Please.
What was version 4?
Version 4 has become known as the status quo budget, Paul. That means there's no consolidation. It keeps the function of county government going. There's no consolidation, but it picks up the savings and the reclassification of Mr. McDonald.
Because I keep looking at version 4.
It was not voted upon by the county commissioners.
Good question. All right. Do I have a preference from the committee members? Would you like to go to the online version of the budget first? John, can we go
Whatever
through
the
that?
chair decides.
I think we should. Yeah. And then but we've got plenty of time to do that, I think.
Bill, if you could enlarge that.
It's gonna get smaller for me to flip it, and then
That's fine. That's fine. So there are several call-out boxes within this structural budget. We don't need to go through all 69 pages. I'll just highlight the changes that I just gave you an overall summary to, starting with revenue. The revenues were adjusted, as you can note. $233,293 will be added to the Registry of Deeds as indirect cost chargebacks for this technology. The source of funding would be deeds excise, so it's attached under the appropriation from the deeds revenues and shown respectively. The next page, you'll see page 21. This is the commissioner's budget for FY23. Note, salary was removed from this budget, and as I mentioned, it's now in the information technology budget. That call out. Let's go to the information technology budget on page 26. Mr. McDonald's new salary is shown here, 108,106, as I mentioned, the classification approved by the commissioners. In addition to that salary, we've added at the bottom under temporary employees, the temporary employee that is assigned to the registry for technology purposes at $46,800. Joining Mr. McDonald, I should have added, was the proposed CIO slot, as well as Mr. Caparata, known as the IT technical support. Page 27 and so forth, these are the results of the transfers in from the various budgets. And you'll see as I place these call-out boxes, we're moving $50,000 into the new IT department from the registry budget, from Brown Tech Services, Get Used, IT consultants. These are technology services that fit under account 5239. We moved in $7,000 for support for interest systems into account number 5299. Transferred in from registry $13,500 into account 5363 for a variety of various computer supplies from Dell, Toshiba, quality, SHI, and so forth. Finally, we moved in $6,300 for miscellaneous technology equipment from SHI from the registry budget. Now, if you'd like to join me on page 65, which I believe you'll find the registrar's budget under temporary employees. Please note that's the removal of the temporary technology removal of 6,100. And in sequence, just to repeat myself, to follow these call-out boxes, these are the notes showing where the transfers came out of the registered budget to reflect the numbers I just showed you. Like this one for each one, but they're identical to the ones that I just said were going in. So it's a complete financial wash. That's it. That presents the changes from the version that you've previously seen with updates on the savings that I identified earlier on.
Great.
Relatively straightforward.
Thank you so much. Okay. Are there questions from committee members about budget changes from version 4 to version 5?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I'll start.
all right, you start.
I am, I'm not exactly sure how to start this, but I'll say that in our last meeting of the NCAB, the point that myself and Mr. Bureau from Franklin trying to make is that the budget hadn't changed. So as far as the question about the CIO position and the registry positions, it was really not an NCAB issue at all. Everything was funded and funded in the right place. I disagree with the consolidation of Mr. Bond. Normally, I would agree with consolidation, except as I read the report that came out, there were 4 options. They didn't really give us a clear direction. They just laid out 4 options and said, this is your choice. I think any one of us could have come up with those 4 options. I think the decision that was made by the commissioners respectfully was drastic at best. I think the removal of the entire IT department from the registry, personally, I think is the wrong way to go. This is myself talking as the Avon representative, and also from the Board of Assessors in the town of Avon. I know there's been a question about the CIO position. I don't want to get into positions because the NCAB does not have authority over human resources. Our job is purely financial and budgetary. So prior to last week's decision, there really was no question for NCAB. Now it's become our issue. And again, my feeling is, as much as I respect the commissioner's decision and I respect the work that was put into this, I don't think this is the right model. My suggestion and the way I thought this was going to be, as far as a somewhat of a what's the word I'm looking for? Compromise, if you will, is for a CIO to be on the county level, have a director, whatever you want to call it, director of IT, whatever you want to call it, have a CIO position that reports to the commissioners, have a dedicated staff for the registry and a dedicated staff for the commissioners. That's the model that I would have liked to have seen as a compromise. 2 to 3 people in the registry, 2 to 3 people in the commissioner's office. Now, I understand that could be an increase in the budget, and maybe we can find ways of cutting to make that money up. I just think that this particular course of action is, to me, is very drastic right now. I think a compromise would be better, and then down the road, we can look at how do we truly consolidate IT into one department that works for everybody, especially if we're going to start looking at software solutions for the registry. Now, I don't know if they've already been looking at these, the Brown Tech and different things like that, but if they're going to start doing that, they're going to need people on site, not just to do the work, but to also be able to coordinate this changeover of software. If anybody's ever gone through a changeover of software, I worked in financial for many years, and when they changed over software, they had an army of computer professionals working on that. So I just want to, I guess I go on record to say that I am not in favor of this version of the budget. I'm in favor of the last budget that was presented to the NCAB. That's my, so I'll get off my soapbox now.
Okay, all right. Questions, Carl, Paul, Joe? Okay. Carl, questions, Paul?
This version here has 3 employees.
3 employees and 1 contracted temp, yes.
And the 3 employees are,
The vacant CIO,
yeah, oh, wow.
yep,
I feel like I'm going back to the Jack Dacey era. It was in colors all over. Sorry about that.
it's on page 26.
Page 26.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the living positions pending. Mark McDonald was commissioners.
Yep.
And 1 tech support person.
Didn't cover that.
And Eric, what you're looking for is to have at least 2 and 2?
I would say 2 and 2,
Am I
yes.
reading you right, 2 and 2?
Or 2 and 1, depending on what the needs of the county side is. We know what the needs of the registry side is. They need at least 2 dedicated people. That's what the register has said
Mhm.
quite a few times. I don't know what the county needs are for an IT support. We've been doing it with 1, so is it possible to do it with 3 plus a temporary? I'm not sure, like, the report doesn't really focus that much on the county side. It focuses a lot on the registry, on what their needs are, what they're gonna need to do, but I didn't see a whole lot of it in the report on what the needs of the county are. Does the county need more than 1 person to support it? Can the county actually have if they have a CIO and 1 dedicated person on the county side, and then 2 dedicated staff on the registry side, maybe that's the model. I'm not sure the exact model, but I think there needs to be, just like with the Aggie, I mean, you have people in this building that are technology experts. The Aggie wasn't put into this report. Why? Because they need their own technology because of the job that they do. I think this is a very similar situation. I even went back as far as to look at Wallaston to see, do they have an IT department? It doesn't look like they have anybody IT under their budget, so they weren't affected at all. But those are the 3 big departments we have here. And the Aggie has their own. Can it be wrapped in later on? Yes, the Reynolds report did say that eventually the school will be wrapped in. But I think this is just too drastic of a measure right now, given that we have a software changeover that's gonna have to happen. Until that happens, I don't think full consolidation of the IT department is the right course of action.
But wouldn't you consider this a start though? The start, first year, as a result of what was hired by the county?
I would say a start would be a split department under 1 director.
Well, actually, I actually think, Eric, that it is that, it's really trying to, I mean, I actually really think that consolidating makes sense because we need higher level expertise at the CIO level. And when I asked Tom Innes in the commissioner's presentation, because I was concerned about if you bring in somebody to do a strategic plan, then what's the implementation? And he I thought, a very, very good point that you don't ask 1 person to do the strategic planning to get to your point of updating software, updating hardware, all that stuff, and then give that to somebody else and have them implement it. You have to bring in the person who's actually doing the assessment to do that strategic planning and have that person be in place and hold the reins, the responsibility of executing what they recommend,
Agreed.
which I think makes most sense operationally. And I don't see this as a reduction at all. And I just want to double check that with the county director to make sure. I don't see a reduction in here. Is there a reduction in here, John?
No.
There's no reduction.
No.
It is a reorganization for sure of people. But that does not mean that physically a person couldn't be still seated at the registry. And in fact, I wonder if that would be the plan. Do we know, John, about that?
It is the plan.
It is the plan, to keep the person physically seated at the registry.
Correct.
So it's really trying to get at mitigating risks of not having an adequate vision for the future of software, hardware, integration, moving from infrastructure-based systems to cloud-based systems, moving to a SaaS model. We can't do that with our existing infrastructure. So we've got to bring in somebody the CIO, basically, to do that kind of legwork, planning, development, have the expertise, and I think you want everybody working in that direction. So I think the only way to really make that happen is to consolidate it. But I think your point about needing somebody at the registry, I think it's a good point. And I don't think that I would not be in favor of a budget that reduced IT. I actually would be hoping that we would be investing in IT for the future, and that investment would include the county, the registry, and eventually the school.
Right.
So I wonder if, I think we're going to have to invest in IT. I don't see how we're not going to have to invest in IT. I mean, I think, isn't that, I'm gonna go back, John, and ask you, I think Tom Innes in his comments was pretty clear about that he thought that some of our biggest risks were the age of our existing software systems.
I think that's,
Am I misstating
no,
that?
that's an accurate statement. I think went further to suggest under a consolidated model, the county ought to consider increasing staffing size to reflect what direction the overall technology movement is.
Yeah. And as a recognition that we're gonna be doing more technology, not less over time, right? So we might have to actually add a position.
Well, I think that's kind of part of my point here, is that we've got a consolidation here of current personnel with no plan on increasing staff at all to accommodate both sides of the coin.
Okay,
So right now, what we would be doing basically, if I'm looking at this right, is we have a CIO potentially in the commissioner's office with 2 reports plus a tech. So technically 3 reports. And then that person's job will not just to be strategic, but to farm out the work as needed. The question is that work? And I don't see anything that says that it does or does not work.
yeah. One thing, this is, all right, I'm bringing to this my experience at the state, but my experience at the state was that my CIO did not report to me. He reported to the CIO for the state.
Yeah.
But the state CIO was very clear to my person, your job is to keep that commissioner happy because we don't want to hear one complaint about that not happening. And I would see it similarly, that the goal would be of the CIO here to be saying, your job is to make sure that the registry is happy with what's happening at the registry, that you're answering their questions, you're available to them, you are doing the work that they need done. And so it's, I think it is, some of the devil is in the details, right? In terms of how it gets executed. If it gets executed with a CIO, this is a good conversation actually, because if it gets executed with a CIO that's clear that our job is to serve the county and our county departments, that culture is probably going to be successful. But if it's, and that's what it should be. I mean, that's what I would advocate for. I don't know, John, do you have an opinion about that? You're the manager here. What do you think?
The opinion I have is reflective of the experience you had as well.
Yeah.
I have actually experienced consolidated technology services in the public sector, and the way you described it, Doctor, was very accurate. It's the movement, and I believe through smart planning and the use of evolved technology, you can really optimize the resources that you're given. The state realized that, and this mimics that.
Yeah.
In some ways.
I mean, we went through a consolidation, I think, Jen, we were doing at the same time.
It was done by edict of the governor's executive.
Yeah, exactly, it was. And we had to go through it, and I have to say, there was a lot of anxiety about it, because you feel like you have all this control over the choices and what's happening, and there's a lot of worry, but once you actually go through it, you realize that the person that they can bring in with IT expertise is way beyond anything that I could have brought in. And I think that's what we're aiming for here with this. So I actually am supportive of this approach. And that's partly based on my experience of going through consolidation. I don't know who consulted on that plan, actually, John.
I don't either.
I just remember from the private sector, especially during like Y2K, there were armies and armies and armies of IT people who were working on that project. When it ended, people had to go somewhere. So outside of the layoffs that happened, which happened, then the next step was consolidation. And consolidation, in most cases, it does work.
Yes.
I don't say, I'm not totally against the fact of consolidation. I think there needs to be clear direction to whoever the CIO is, whoever the leader of, I don't want to get away from titles.
Yeah, right.
Whoever the leader of that department
Right.
is, I think there has to be clear direction that there needs to be dedicated staff on both sides. And because, I mean, let's face it, whether it's school registry, golf course, or commissioner, it doesn't really matter. There's certain expertise that people are going to need to do that particular job. You can't just take a computer guy off the street and throw him in the registry. It's not going to work. So we have to make sure that we have the right people doing the right things, and that CIO's responsibility
Yeah,
should be to make sure that happens. But I don't know if this,
especially
I
in
don't
the
know how to
transition.
say this. The transition is the tough part. Absolutely there is.
right.
You know, we did the same thing in our town, granted it was small, but we had an IT director who ended up leaving. Left us pretty much holding, you know, in the lurch. We ended up making a deal with our schools to consolidate. So we had two people that were dedicated to the schools who were now also doing the town.
Yep,
That time, and that includes police, fire, and all of our public services. And there are times where it doesn't work. I mean, it works good in most cases, but there are times when police has a problem. We had this problem once. The police had a dispatch system in that town. The guys were in the middle of something else at the school and couldn't get over there. And that left them without, they had to switch over to Holbrook, I think, for a few hours just to figure it all out. But it does happen. You know, I guess that's my main concern is there going to be a sufficient amount of staff? And the report did say at some point that, you know, we could be looking at a total of 5 full-time employees. So if we're going to truly consolidate, shouldn't we also include a potential increase in staff now, instead of waiting until next year, or instead of waiting to a supplemental down the road? Because we know we're going to need it.
so I think that's a reasonable question. John, do you have any thoughts about the staffing on this issue, potential for investment?
Yeah, can I jump in on this?
Yeah, please go.
So,
Yeah,
Eric, you know so much more about IT. You really do, and I know the doctor does too, and John certainly does also. Our goal is to go along, is to take guidance from and hopefully go along with this new IT director. And if the IT director says we need 5 people to register, we're gonna greenlight it. But we want the best IT possible to registry in the county as a whole. And that's all we want. We just want good government, just trying to get this done and get it done right. And we know it's gonna take, I think, John, was it over a year to try to get this transition going? It's gonna take a while. Get this person come in, figure out the plan, how to initiate the plan. But the people that are at the registry right now, working for the registrar, they're gonna be at the same desk. It's gonna be the same people. But that's not gonna change. So if there's an unease that we're gonna pull those people out and they're gonna be rudderless, that's not so. But our goal is to move forward with a vision towards the future as opposed to the 20-year-old past, because we're dealing with an archaic system which needs to be updated, drastically needs to be updated because it's not safe right now.
Let me ask you a simple, what I think is a simple question anyway. Okay, so right now there are 2 people at the registry.
Correct.
There's one and an intern. So we have one and a boy out of college who fixes jams, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, he fixes jams in the copy machine. We have one full-time person who is extremely overwhelmed, and his words to me yesterday, we're just keeping the lights on. Even your Riffles report would say, under the present conditions, we need 2 to 3 here. So we are understaffed drastically right now under any scenario consolidation. And you know what, I'm not weighing in on that. Under any scenario, we need more now, and under consolidation, what, several years? You can't.
okay, all right, hold on. So I wanna say then, I think this is already in place, if that's the case.
I can't hear, sorry.
I'm sorry, I think this is already an increase if you only have one and an intern, because this actually is 1 and a full temp, right?
No, that is the.
The temp is.
That is the temp, okay, all right, that is, okay, all right, well, it might be that, so, was there any discussion about increasing investment of personnel?
We wanted to take guidance from the IT person coming in.
So the first thing would be to get the IT person on board.
Yes.
That might not be as hard as we think, actually. I don't think we're talking years.
Well, with all due respect, we've been without the other person for just about a year. I think it's like happy anniversary. We've been without that second person in that department. We had someone there for 5 months who spent that time training. And I just want to be clear. While Dan Caparata, who's our network administrator, can go anywhere, your present IT staff cannot come in and work at the registry. All right, it's totally different. And I think Tom Ennis from Ripple said you need a specific dedicated staff at the registry. And that's what we don't have now, and that's what this plan, and thank you, Eric, for, somehow we need the staff there now. And I think that's what Tom Ennis said, spent a lot of time with them. And I said, why is this whole report about the registry? And he looked at me and he said, because that's where the technology is. All the infrastructure is at the registry. So I'm just,
I'm going to move us back to the budget, okay?
Madam Chair, may I ask
Yes.
a question? So my understanding is that there will be 2 funded positions that will be assigned to the registry.
Yes.
And that would be Mr. Caparata, who has been there, as well as the other position has not been filled, arguably because the register has said that there was a question mark at the end of that. Be that as it may. But there are 2 positions there.
Mhm.
So immediately upon acceptance of this, there will be 2 people at the registry. Is that not correct?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Commissioner?
Okay, so there is no issue about having 2 people at the registry. There will be 2 people at the registry.
the CIO will be at the registry. John?
CIO is going to be shared between the registry and the county.
But so he won't just, and I don't want to argue, but he won't be at the registry full time.
He or she could very well be at the registry as often as he or she needs to be.
So but it's not a full time. I just want to be clear because Ripple says we need 2 full-time dedicated IT staff, but we'll have 1 and a shared staff under this plan.
The CIO will go where he or she is needed. If that is the registry full-time, they'll be sitting there full-time. Plus Dan Caparata, plus the temporary employee.
Until such a time as that CIO or that leader says to the county, we need more people.
Here's the plan, here are the kind of skills we need, is the setup.
And once that happens, we'll bring my.
Yeah. And by having this is a balanced budget, correct?
It is.
Yeah. By having a balanced budget, we actually have the potential to be able to have financing to do that. To fund other positions if we need that. That's a huge accomplishment.
Well, that would be a supplemental.
It would be a
It's not included in this.
It's not, but it would be a supplemental, right? But we're not, in the past several years, we've had to be digging out of structural deficits.
True.
So this is a big
Yes.
step forward in that way. It's very hard to fund expansion positions when you're already in a structural deficit. So this is, I think, we're set up and the timing here is really good to do something like this when we're starting with a budget that doesn't have a structural deficit.
Madam Chair, if I may, talking
Please.
about timing.
Sure.
So in looking at timing, interest rates are going up. Home values are going to go down. So
Yeah.
that's going to be less revenue. So if we're going to make an investment, this would be the time to do it, where we have the money available now, where we may not have it in the future. And if we bypass this, I don't think we are fulfilling our fiduciary responsibilities to the rest of the county. Because if we don't move forward, if we rely on tradition, if we rely on, this is how the things always went, we're not going to get anywhere. And we're going to be stuck in the same position that we've been in and not be able to move forward. So if there was any time to do it, it is now, before things really start to change in the real estate market, before interest rates go up, values go down. It's already happening. I think this is the perfect time to seize the opportunity, take care of this, move it forward, and make sure that the county has everything in play for our future.
Do you feel better knowing that there'd be 2 people sitting in the county? So Because they do it again, keep saying with the county.
Well, I think it sounds like the only thing we're talking about is difference in reporting structure.
That is all we're talking.
I mean, it sounds like if you're gonna put two people, it's the CIO or whatever you wanna call it,
Mhm.
plus Dan is gonna be at the registry. Mark is still gonna be at the county.
Yeah.
All we're really talking about is who they report to.
Mhm.
Correct. Am I right in that? And that's really all we're talking about.
Right.
And then if the CIO is sitting at the registry or sitting in the commissioner's office, doesn't really matter. That person's job is gonna be coming in and saying, we need another person in the registry, another person in the county, or whatever that person thinks strategically we need to have. So am I getting that right?
Yes.
Is that we're talking about who they report to?
Yes.
We're not talking about position,
That's,
titles.
That's right.
We're not talking about positions, really.
that's where I came in when you first started speaking. I said, isn't this a start? You're creating a position, you're putting the process together. We know it's gonna have to have additional staffing. We know there's gonna be a supplemental budget in here.
And
So
capital.
let's not put blinders on. It's gonna happen. The fact is, there are gonna be two people in the registry. All of those, that one person, whatever that title is going to be, could be 90% of the time there and 10% of the commissioners. But it's unlikely at the beginning because it looks like the needs are all gonna be at the registry right now. So if you take this budget as it's presented right now, start here, find out what that person coming in into that new position, whatever the title is gonna be, again, it's gonna be CIO or CFO, whatever you wanna make it, will determine what the staffing is gonna be. It could be two people, additional people. We don't know yet. And then we'll be going back for registry of deeds money to fund the positions. But I think it's a start to go back to what you had said. No change in the whole budget. This is a balanced budget presented right now. Everybody goes in with open eyes, knowing that we're gonna need staffing, additional staffing, and move forward. Now, the names on here, it appears to me, I'm gonna go because the names are on here already. Limby's on here, but that's a pending position.
That's the CIO vacancy.
That's right, exactly. Then McDonald and Caparata. And sorry, somebody already said on that side, Parada is gonna be, McDonald's gonna be in the commissioner's office. So the only question now is, who does that one person report to?
The CIO.
Director?
Who's the CIO report to?
All right.
Is that your question, Paul?
Okay.
Yeah, is that your question?
If that's the title, yeah.
Or whoever that person is, the head of the IT department. Who does that question report? to?
County director.
County director.
Okay.
So it's a very high level position.
Perfect.
So it's. Good.
Madam Chair, when it's appropriate,
Yes, hold on 1 second. I usually don't take public comment at the committee meetings. Because we don't usually have time, we don't budget time for that. It's not on the agenda. And so I don't think it's really appropriate for me to take public comment here. I would say, however, given that it is an open meeting, if there are any Norfolk County Advisory Board members who want to raise, who are on Zoom, who need to speak, I want to make sure we do recognize them, since we are a subcommittee of the Norfolk County Advisory Board.
And Madam Chair, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt, but anyone who wishes to speak will have opportunity at the public hearing.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's what we should leave the public comment for the public hearing
Which
section.
begins in 15 minutes.
Yes, which begins in 15 minutes. Okay, is there anybody on the Zoom call, Bill? Can you tell?
It is just Ms. Cyril from Wellesley.
And does Barbara want to
She
speak?
has not indicated she.
Okay, all right. I think to keep with my typical managing, because we do not have a public hearing posted, so I would like to wait until we get to the public hearing at 6 o'clock. Okay, so we as a finance committee need to make a recommendation to the full advisory board at their meeting tonight about this budget. And I'm wondering, I think we should take and just take a vote as to the recommendation to the whole board. And clearly the implementation of this is going to be really important, Mr. Cronin. And I think I would argue that we should include in our language something about the implementation and successful implementation of the budget, because I think Eric, you're raising that issue right out of the gate, so it will be the right thing to do. And Commissioner, you're responding to that too.
yes.
Okay, so would I have a motion from the finance committee, a member of the finance committee to approve of this budget? to recommend to the advisory board that we approve this budget as sole advisory board or not?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you, Mr. Balda. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
You'll second it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Connors. Okay, Eric, I think you should vote to conscience. And let's
I
take a,
always do,
I know you do.
just so you know.
I know you do. That's why I'm saying that. You just
Yes.
do what you need to do. All right, let's take a roll call vote since we're on a hybrid meeting, okay? Any further discussion among the committee members before we do that?
Just, I seconded that motion because I have a full awareness that we're gonna be coming back to revisit this within 6 months.
Okay,
I see changes coming, I see additional staff coming, but I'm second, so we get the process going and be effective July 1st and we'll move forward.
okay,
Through Madam,
yes,
we do have a
Yeah,
request.
we're coming back.
Yes,
We do have
thank
a
you.
request if we could restate clearly the motion.
okay. The motion, Carl, you correct me if it, do you want to state it? You state it the way.
The motion would be to recommend to the full advisory board that we recommend approval to the full advisory board of version 5 dated 5/11/23.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
That
Okay,
was seconded.
all right, okay, let's vote. Carl,
Aye.
Eric.
Nay.
Nay. Paul.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the chair votes aye. So it's a 4-1 vote to recommend approval to the Norfolk County Advisory Board of the version 5 of the Norfolk County operating budget, and I will report that out when we get to the full board meeting tonight. Okay, let's move on to the second item, which is the third item, which is a critical item, which is the supplemental. Okay, thank you.
For the finance committee's consideration, a very brief but necessary fourth supplemental. This seeks to approve through transfer $39,337. Primarily, there are two items in play. The schools have increased need for expenditure of lunch reimbursement services. And moving funds from surplus in FY22 to recover that expenditure opportunity. And furthermore, the Wallace recreational facility, there was a insurance claim on a damaged fence. We recovered $4,337 that needs to be transferred to our fund to expend monies appropriately. Reimbursement, actually. So that's the total.
Okay. All right, is there any discussion among the members of the finance committee on this item?
Housekeeping item.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion?
I will make the motion to approve the fourth supplemental dated 5/11/2022 in the amount of $39,337.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, let's vote this. We have to do a roll call again. Mr. Baldock?
Aye.
Mr. Beckerman?
Aye.
Mr. Connors?
Aye.
Mr. Reardon?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Elizabeth Childs. Okay. All right, that takes care of that item. And now the minutes, I hope people got a chance to look at them. Bill sent them out ahead of time. Do I need to do these all separately, Bill? Yeah. Chairman is telling me yes. Okay, yeah. Okay. The minutes of the meeting of April 13th, 2022, I think that was all of one page long. Do I have a motion to accept that?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Beckerman, thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. Okay, let's vote for that. Mr. Baldock.
Aye.
Mr. Beckerman.
Aye.
Mr. Connors.
Aye.
Mr. Reardon.
Aye.
And the chair Childs votes aye. Okay, the minutes of the meeting of April 6th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Beckerman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Baldock. Okay, let's vote. Any discussion? All right, let's vote. Mr. Baldock.
Aye.
Mr. Beckerman.
Aye.
Mr. Connors.
Aye.
Mr. Reardon.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. And the minutes of the joint meeting with the county commissioners on Wednesday, April 27th for approval.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Beckerman. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Baldoff. Any discussion?
I was not present, so I won't be voting.
Thank you
I
for
was
telling me.
partially present.
Susan Gordon. Okay, all right. All of those in favor, Mr. Baldoff?
Aye.
Mr. Beckerman?
Aye.
Mr. Connors? Abstain. Mr. Reardon?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. Thank you very much. Those minutes passed also. All right, is there anything under number 7 that we have to address? Okay. All right, no new information, okay.
Motion to adjourn, is that it?
I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Beckerman. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have to vote this one as well. I'm very sorry, gentlemen. Mr. Balda.
Aye.
Mr. Beckerman.
Aye.
Mr. Connors. Mr. Burden. The chair votes aye. Okay, motion to adjourn is accepted. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, and the meeting for the Norfolk County Advisory Board begins at 6, and it starts with public comment, I believe.
Madam Chair, I'm
Yes.
just gonna leave the Zoom on.
Oh, that's fine. Okay. Thank you to our Zoom participants. We appreciate you dialing in.
Norfolk County Advisory Board to begin every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I will ask my colleague, the clerk of the Norfolk County Advisory Board, Eric Beckerman from Avon, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Norfolk County Advisory Board meeting of Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. It is with profound apologies that we acknowledge that the Finance Committee meeting went a little bit late. And so we were a little bit late in starting this meeting. But to those, particularly those on Zoom who have been waiting patiently for some time, please accept our sincere apology. As we begin today, we want to first acknowledge that this room setup is a little bit different. So I'm going to ask that anyone who is not an advisory board member, please clear the area by the table. And if you could do that now, please. No, you were county director and the commissioners. So I'd ask the register and the assistant register to not be at the table for deliberations. If you could, please. You will have the opportunity with the public to be able to speak from the microphone.
Could I leave just to leave?
You can leave your paperwork, yeah, that's fine. But we just want to make sure that all the advisory board members can be seen and heard, and there isn't confusion as to who's an advisory board member or not.
Here you go. Turn your volume up.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who is not an advisory board member other than the commissioners or the director? Or anyone like Mr. Buckley, who is monitoring our Zoom? Thank you. I see all of the county staff is in their position on the side. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. The way that this will have to work tonight is due to the fact that we are operating a hybrid meeting. There are several things that will need to occur. First and foremost is that every vote taken will be taken by a roll call vote, so that every person's vote will be heard and recorded appropriately. There shall be no voice votes tonight. In addition, anyone who wishes to speak, because of the setup, if you look to my left, there is a camera there, and above the screen, we'll be able to see people to the podium so that everyone will be seen and heard. The microphone here is very sensitive, so it picks up any conversation. So I'd ask that people keep their private conversations either, I would say, outside of the room if they need to do so. I was going to say very quiet, but that probably won't work. If you could keep it outside of the room, we would appreciate it. So any conversations that will be held privately should be outside of the room. Deliberations are different. I'm going to also ask that any member who wishes to speak recognize themselves in their community, because we have people on Zoom who may or may not know who we are, so that everyone will know that, as an example, not to pick on my friend from Brookline, that the chair of the Finance Committee, our vice chair, is Elizabeth Childs from Brookline, so people would know. We just want to make sure that with this Zoom situation that everything is in place. Are there any questions? I want to throw that out before we begin, because this is a little bit different, the hybrid. We did this a couple of years ago, and I think the technology here today, through Mr. Buckley and Mr. Cronin's efforts, is right on target. So we should be in good place. The first item will be to call the roll and determine if we have a quorum. So Mr. Ian Tosca from the County Commissioner's Office is recording this, recording all of the minutes and recording the roll call. So I would ask Mr. Beckerman to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Avon is present. Bellingham. Braintree.
Here.
Brookline.
Here.
Canton.
Yes.
Cohasset.
Here.
Dedham.
Here.
Dover. Foxborough.
Here.
Franklin.
Here.
Holbrook.
Here.
Medfield.
Here.
Medway.
Present.
Millis. Milton.
Here.
Edom.
Here.
Norfolk.
Here.
Norwood.
Here.
Plainville.
Present.
Quincy.
Here.
Randolph.
Present.
Sharon.
Here.
Stoughton. Wellesley.
Here.
Walpole.
Present.
Weymouth.
Here.
Westwood.
Here.
And Rentham.
Present. I have 93.11.
I'm sorry, Phil, I didn't get that. Could you repeat that, please?
93.11.
Excellent. It's good attendance. Given the fact that we will be continuing a public hearing, which I will ask for a motion for in a few moments, at this time, I would ask for a motion to take care of the item number 4, which is a housekeeping item, minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, April 13th. Is there a motion to move that to the floor and be able to address that now?
So moved.
Can we move to take it out of order first?
Move to take the item out of order for action.
Mr. Boyd?
Second.
And if anyone is making a motion, if you could identify yourselves, we know who you are, but those on Zoom probably do not or can't see us. So if we could do that, please. So the motion has been made by Mr. Boynton and seconded by Mr. Beckman, is that correct?
Correct.
To move the item 4, minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, April 13th, 2022 for approval to be called upon now. Do I hear any objections? Any discussion? Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we do have to do a roll call vote. This should be pretty quick. I would ask that Mr. Iantoska call, Mr. Beckman call the roll, Mr. Iantoska record the roll.
Avon votes aye. Bellingham. Braintree.
Yes.
Brookline.
Aye.
Canton.
Yes.
Cohasset.
Aye.
Dedham.
Aye.
Dover. Foxborough.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Holbrook.
Yes.
Medway.
Yes.
Medfield.
Aye.
Millis. Milton.
Aye.
Needham.
Aye.
Norfolk.
See, yes.
Norwood.
Yes.
Plainville.
Yes.
Quincy.
Yes.
Randolph.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Stoughton. Wellesley.
Yes.
Westwood.
Since I was not present, I believe I have to abstain.
This should be a motion, Mr. Walsh, just to move it to the 4 of the agenda.
Okay, then I vote yes.
Thank you.
Weymouth.
Yes.
Rentham.
Aye.
Phil?
93.11.
Imagine that. Thank you very much. Mr. Boydman, do you wish to make that motion again, please?
Yes, Frank Medway, move to approve the minutes as written.
Mr. Boynton has made a motion. Is there a second?
Eric Beckerman from Avon second.
Mr. Beckerman from Avon seconds. Call the roll. Mr. Beckerman, please.
Avon, aye.
Sorry.
Okay. Bellingham. Braintree.
Aye.
Brookline.
Aye.
Canton.
Yes.
Cohasset.
Aye.
Dedham.
Aye.
Dover. Foxborough.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Holbrook.
Yes.
Medway.
Yes.
Medfield. Abstain. Millis. Milton.
Aye.
Needham.
Aye.
Norfolk.
Aye.
Norwood.
Yes.
Plainville.
Yes.
Quincy.
Yes.
Randolph.
Yes.
Sharon. Yes. Stoughton. Wellesley.
Yes.
Weymouth.
Yes.
Westwood.
Abstain.
Rentham.
Abstain.
Bill.
86.87.
Mr. Speaker, point of order. Walpole was not called.
I'd love to be speaker, but I'll take chair. And
I thought I
I'm
called.
sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I'm on the phone. So Walpole, I did not hear Walpole.
Yeah, Walpole.
can't forget Walpole.
Absolutely not.
You are,
Walpole
and your
says
vote was
yes.
set. Thank you,
Walpole says yes on the notes. Thank you.
thank you. And again, to my colleagues, I apologize, but the hybrid version, as through the governor's order, requires that everyone be recognized so that the vote is available to the public. The next item would be the FY 22 fourth supplemental appropriation. Recognize County Director John Cronin and through the commissioners, County Director John Cronin to share information about this particular item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, members of the advisory board, good evening. This is a very brief fourth supplemental appropriation request. Essentially, it's from two departments. The first, the schools are wishing to increase their spending authority for federal school lunch program of $35,000. That'll be offset by spending for temporary staff and service supplies. The Walsh recreational facility had a insurance claim totaling $4,337. We are receiving the funds and we wish to put them into the miscellaneous contractual services to offset the expense. In total, Mr. Chairman, I wish to request the advisory board's permission and approval to approve $39,337 in this final, hopefully final FY 22 supplemental request.
Is there a motion to approve the supplemental appropriation, Mr. Boynton?
Appointment from Medway, move to approve the request as presented.
Mr. Boynton of Medway makes a motion to approve as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Padula of Franklin. Is there any discussion? Any questions, Mr. Boynton?
Yeah, just simply, he just jinxed it, there will be a fifth.
Thank you for the levity.
Mr. Chairman,
The only discussion I would say is that the finance committee voted to recommend approval of the supplemental.
Thank
as
you,
written.
Myra. Thank you, Mr. Connors. Chair Childs. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask Mr. Beckman to call the roll.
Avon votes aye. Bellingham. Braintree.
Aye.
Brookline.
Aye.
Canton.
Yes.
Cohasset.
Aye.
Dedham.
Aye.
Dover. Foxborough.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Holbrook.
Yes.
Medfield.
Aye.
Medway.
Yes.
Millis. Milton.
Aye.
Needham.
Aye.
Norfolk.
aye.
Norwood.
Yes.
Plainville.
Yes.
Quincy.
Yes.
Randolph.
Yes.
Sharon.
Abstain.
Stoughton. Wellesley.
yes,
Weymouth.
Yes.
Walpole.
Yes.
Westwood.
Yes.
And Rentham.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Mr. Iantosca.
Yep, it is 90.79.
Thank you very much. At this point, having adjourned the public hearing previously, I would accept a motion to open the public hearing again for the vote on the proposed FY 23 budget. So moved, Ms.
Second.
You.
Plainville.
It has been moved by Mr. Ryan of Braintree, and Mr. Balder for plaintiffs is seconded. And Mr. Iantosca, I ask you, Mr. Beckman asked you to call the roll, Mr. Iantosca to recall.
Can you give me a minute? I wasn't expecting 5,000 votes.
Sorry,
I
it's hybrid, Phil. This is how. we
know, I
roll.
know. I had like 7 sheets prepared. I wasn't expecting this many. Please give me about 1 minute. Thank
You
you.
got it.
Chairman, point of order, can you just declare the hearing reopened?
I am unaware of that, but I would defer to, we don't have counsel here. Let me say this, if there is no objection to reopening the hearing, I would be happy to declare that. Is there any objection from any of the members? Hearing none, I declare it open. So with that, Phil, you're off the hook.
Thank
With
you very
that,
much. I
you're
appreciate it.
welcome. With that, I would like to establish some guidelines here. There are people who wish to speak, both on Zoom and here present in the room. In deference to the elected officials who are here, the Register of Deeds has expressed an interest in presenting. So the Register of Deeds will go first, followed by any other elected officials present. And by that, I mean county elected officials. From there, it would be preferable if we could have a list, those who wish to speak, to advise us, just to make it easier for those on Zoom. Those on Zoom, I'm going to defer to Mr. Buckley at this point. Mr. Buckley, do you have the hand raising opportunity on that?
Yes, so
Okay.
if those on Zoom could either raise their hand or indicate in the chat they would like to be called on, we could call on them in
Okay.
order of their hand being
Thank you.
raised.
So the first presentation obviously would be from the commissioners. And then from there, because this is a new presentation of the budget, it will be open to public comment. The first will be Register of Deeds Bill O'Donnell, and then any other elected officials present from the county who wish to do so. From there, it will be open to any member of the public who wishes to speak. I would like to, if it's fair to our Zoom members, to be able to do that here first and then focus on those on Zoom. There will be no opportunity for interrogatory. This is a statement, this is a presentation, this is testimony. There'll be no back and forth. This is an opportunity to present your opinion, your case about the budget. Once an individual has spoken, they may be seated. Following the testimony, the advisory board will take it up on their own for deliberations at the close of the public hearing. At that time, if a member of the advisory board wishes to ask a question of anyone who has spoken, we will obviously offer that opportunity. So those who speak should be available for further questions afterward from the advisory board. So that is how we proceed. With that, I will, and I know Chair Shea is not here, so I would refer my next move to the commissioners, either Commissioner Stady or Commissioner Collins, to represent the commissioners and perhaps recognize Mr. Cronin for a presentation.
I'd just like to recognize Mr. Cronin for the presentation.
That was very easy. Thank you.
Let's proceed.
Please.
Good evening, members of the advisory board, and to those on our Zoom. I'll ask Bill if he could pull up a brief PowerPoint deck that I prepared to help facilitate this evening's discussion. We last spoke on April 13th when I presented a budget to you. Since then, events have unfolded regarding the Ripples Group report, which were associated with potential IT assessment of the county. The result of the vote of the county commissioners on May 4, FY23 proposed budget known as version 5 is before you this evening. This version simply builds on prior budget, makes a couple of modest changes regarding administration, but more precisely addresses and creates an IT department through consolidated resources from the Commissioner's Office as well as the Registry of Deeds. Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, I'll go through the deck, and as we did with the Finance Committee, or members of the advisory board wish to go into the budget for the call-out explanations, I'll proceed as you direct.
Please do. Thank you, Director.
So we are here as a result of our proposed budget development schedule, revised March 24th, to deal with the public hearing on the FY23 operating budget shown on slide 2. As stated back in April, but to restate our budget goals for FY23 to achieve a maintenance level budget. Our revenues, as the advisory board members understand, are relatively stable but flat when the revenues are expected to come in. We prioritize reforms and efficiencies while protecting core services. The report includes recommendations of the Abrahams Group where relevant. The Abrahams Group made 88 recommendations that we are tracking, and we've been implemented or plan to implement approximately 63.8% of them. Plan calls for an HR specialist budgeted and a fiscal specialist, which is planned. The conversion of this budget to an IB database for FY '24 is underway. The advisory board funded a fiscal services contract. We have hired a vendor. That vendor helped achieve this version that you're looking at now, and they're working towards making sure the version that we'll create next year will be more streamlined, effectively eliminating the Microsoft Excel medium, putting it right directly into the database from which we'll draw reports. We're also looking at migration of accounting technology service to the cloud in FY '23, and also revision to update the county personnel handbook, which was also funded by this board and will be getting underway this summer. As I mentioned, the Ripples Group delivered their recommendations to the Norfolk County Commissioners on April 27th. The report was put under advisement to solicit any and all feedback. The Norfolk County Commissioners adopted the recommendations with minimal changes from this draft on May 4th. How do we achieve this balanced budget? There's a lot of collaboration with the Finance Committee, discussions and choices with the county commissioners. We relied on a balance of policy goals, past funding levels, and assignment of costs where most appropriate. That brings us to the version 5 budget, which is before you this evening. It was developed to consolidate technology services under the new Department of Information Technology. This version was voted favorably by the Norfolk County Commissioners on May 4th and voted 2-1. The version altered the proposed Registry of Deeds budget previously proposed on April 13th. Please note that the registry's maintenance of effort is still projected to be 1.025% of spending per the Treasurer's trial balance report of February 28, 2022. Excuse me. Version 5 funds an additional $293 from Deeds Excise to offset the registry's indirect costs associated with this new IT service. The consolidation effectively takes the staff salaries from the Commissioner's office, the Registry of Deeds, into this new IT department, totaling $333,394.02. plus an additional $46,800 in IT temp costs. Non-salary expenses related to technology services were transferred from the Registry of Deeds to the IT department, totaling $76,800. Members should be aware that the salary of the Commissioner's Office Data Processing Manager was reclassified and approved by the Commissioners. It's before you this evening. This new salary is based on market salary, skills, and experience. One note, as a result of analyzing the budget that you saw on April 13th, there were a couple of savings that I'll point out. So subsequently, that budget is approximately $116,000 below where it was back on April 13th. Those items included $35,000 savings in the Commissioner's office under account 5239. Those services associated with professional services were no longer needed in FY '23. The last item that we recovered costs on were associated with an approved advisory board element. You may recall approving the asset management software program in FY '22. That project will not be going forward for the foreseeable future. We remove that funding from FY '23 base at $83,000 savings. That is the end of the deck presentation, Mr. Chairman. If you wish, I'll move on into the budget. If that is your desire, or I can accept questions.
No, please continue.
Please proceed. Bill, if you could pull up D5. Version 5 shown here in a flipbook style, which creates a better viewing experience for a lot of people. Makes it easy to page through and observe the document in a much more streamlined version. On the revenue side, on page 3, calling out the fact that in order to show the expenses associated with the IT consolidation, $233,293 will be added to the Registry of Deeds as indirect cost charged back for this technology. So it's shown on the revenue side here. What I'm about to do is to accelerate the presentation directly to the page numbers within the budget that saw a change since our last presentation on April 13th. So the next page I'll ask those to turn to would be stand by. Page 21, this is the Commissioner's budget for FY '23. calling out the fact that we have moved the data processing manager to McDonald from the commissioner's office to the new information technology department. On page 22, please note, as I mentioned, under category, group 2, category 5239, professional technical services, the line for FY 23 was reduced by $50,000, no expenses planned in FY 23. Moving on, we'll now move to page 26, which is the new IT department. Members will notice that we have placed Mr. McDonald as well as 2 other individuals, or 2 other positions, I should say, from the registry into this department. 3 FTEs are shown, as well as the new salary for Mr. McDonald. At the bottom of page 26, please note there's a call out that shows the technology services under temp for $46,800 are now displayed. Page 27, we're still within the IT department. The consolidation is funded from, as I mentioned earlier, transfer of funds from the registry of deeds as follows: $50,000 into account 5239 for Brown Tech Services, Get Views, and other IT consulting services. $7,000 for interest services, account 5299. $13,500 computer supplies for account 5363 within group 2, group 3. And that's for Dell, Toshiba, Business Solutions, SHI, Raleigh Computer, and so forth. And then finally, under miscellaneous technology equipment, $6,300 from SHI into account 5599 in group 4. Chairman, as you probably recall from our discussion under the Finance Committee, the remaining changes within this budget are reflected in the registry's budget. It's a reverse of what I just mentioned. I'm happy to reiterate that, but effectively the following call outs on page 65, 66, 67 are identical to the ones I just mentioned. It's just drawing those funds into this new department.
Thank you, Mr. Cronin.
You're very welcome.
As I mentioned previously, this is not an interrogatory. The only individuals allowed to ask questions are members of the advisory board. At this time, do any members of the advisory board have questions of the commissioners through the county director? Padula for Franklin is recognized.
Thank you. If you could, I know you said it's a swap, but just so we can see what the swap is in case there's any queries on pages 65, 66, 67. Please, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to the gentleman from Franklin's question, page 65, the bottom shows removal of $46,800 from temporary employees. Page 66 shows the removal under professional and technical of $50,000 for Brown Tech and IT consultants. Page 66 into 67 shows the removal of funds, $7,000 for interest systems from account 5299. Further on page 67, removal of $11,000 from Dell, account 5363 for Dell services, Toshiba Business Solutions, Huawei Computer, and so forth. And then finally, $2,500 out on account 5399 for SHI. That is $2,500. And finally, on page 69, removal of $6,300 to SHI to the technology budget. That is account 5599.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the members? Mr. Brown from Needham, you're recognized.
Paul Brown, Needham. On page 66, what's the meaning of the yellow highlighting on the line? $25,000.
Page number again, sir?
66.
That's an item that carried over from the request of the Registry of Deeds and its funding. That item was specifically called out as an area of improvement needed by the Registry of Deeds to invest in additional computer hardware in FY 23. That's all it is. It's a notation.
The yellow highlighting.
It's just calling out the fact that that was an item that was of particular interest to the Abraham's group for improvement for funding hardware, computer hardware, and that's all.
Any other questions from the members?
Gus Worby from Medfield. I apologize. This is my first meeting, so.
Let's recognize
No question.
a new member. Thank you very much.
The only question I had on some of the amounts that were transferred, especially for services, I'm just curious, is that merely a budget change, or does the activity that was in the original spot, does that also transfer? So is it a transfer of responsibility to the activity, or is it just a financial transfer?
It is both. The financial transfer removes the authority to oversee the staff specifically and into a consolidated department under the direction of the county director reporting to the county commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Brown?
I'll round Needham. I have another question on page 3, the summary page. I'm just a little confused just on the structure of the presentation of the material. Maybe it's clearer and I'm just not understanding it. Starting with the center lower portion of the page, appropriations from agricultural school revenues. I get the math there, the 11.4 plus the 3.8 minus the 4.3 equals 11,007,269, which carries the right. If I do the same thing up above, 3,425, 358 plus 3,489 minus 3,421,870, I don't seem to get a total which matches anything on the right. And I'm just
Those are subcategories, Mr. Brown. They carry over into the department budgets. With regard to the registry of deeds piece, the appropriation for 3,425, I believe marks the amount, 3,421 marks the mandated county funding required under the 2.5% increase.
so the portions in the center of the page don't necessarily relate
They do
directly.
not to the right side. No.
That's okay, thank you.
Other members? Okay, thank you. So open the public comment. I recognize Registrar O'Donnell. Registrar O'Donnell is an elected official. It's the courtesy of going first. Registrar, I'd ask you to use the podium if you may, please. You take your stuff. It's your stuff. It's just no, I prefer you stay at the podium, Registrar. So because of Zoom. No, you can bring your stuff with you, but we can't see you on Zoom. I'm not making this stuff up right now. Like
They can hear me.
podium's there. And if I may, before it begins, excuse me, Register, can you ask if all the people on Zoom can see the register and hear the register, please? Mr.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Tom from Dedham, he was better at the table, not the podium. I can't see his face at the podium. The table was much more clearer.
Thank you, Mr. Polito. We're asking all the people on Zoom, stand by.
I'm on Zoom.
You're one person. I'd ask that the people in the room, please keep your voices down. The microphone picks a lot of things up.
We just heard from Mr. Polito.
Mr. Polito is the only member, so it is assumed that the podium works.
I guess so.
Okay.
I asked him.
Register, you're recognized.
Good evening, members of the advisory board. Good evening to the people out on Zoom and staff members and the general public. Really, we're here based on what's being done to the registry in this budget. I know it's been a long year of listening to what has gone on at the registry, but I believe, again, it was a 2-to-1 consolidated budget vote that took place on May 4th, last Wednesday. And there's different versions. I know you're voting on version 5. When we were going over to the meeting on May 4th, Marguerite Lee, the first assistant, requested a budget just because we're going over there to vote. And so there's a lot of versions out there. The version 5 that is before you, we don't support. And we don't support it because in this consolidated budget, we believe it's ill-advised. We believe it's contrary to statutory authority. Can I start all over?
You can do whatever you want. You're the register.
Except sit there.
No, that's correct. You're not a member of the advisory.
Mr. Chair,
recognize the gentlewoman from Norwood, Mrs. Donahue.
As one fellow human being to another, we have legal documents or papers that we need for our presentation. A podium may not be an effective place to be able to reach, to access those documents.
They can access whatever. The register is free to move back and forth. I'm just concerned about see the camera? So the camera is the issue. We want to make sure that everyone can see and hear anyone who's speaking. So with us, we set this up in a particular way so that the members of the advisory board can be seen and heard. But just look at that information that's on the desk there. So we want to make sure that the register can be seen and heard. This is all being recorded as well. So there's no issue with that. Fully transparent.
My objection stands.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue.
Yeah, I know there's been plenty of information. I apologize if the information doesn't get out because there is quite a lot of information that has been built up since on June 30th, again, a 2-to-1 vote. We had for new members, we had a registry chief information officer who retired, and we replaced him. We had a search that started in February, and we put the papers in June, and on June 30th, that vote, it was a 2-to-1. The interesting thing is the advisory board on May of 2021 had voted the registry chief information officer. And people have issues with titles, but we've had a registry chief information officer since Chuck Phelan, who is the Quincy advisory board member. He was the first chief information officer for the registry back in 2002. He went to work, back to work for Quincy in 2008, and we had Jim Limby from 2008 to 2021. Great people, more importantly, talented people. Jim Limby was a Cornell graduate, Chuck, very skilled. So we had a two-person department, and we've done a lot. And there's been a lot of innovation since 2002. And I hear people saying, well, it's time for change. The registry's been at the forefront of change. And the registry infrastructure, the technological infrastructure is so much larger than the county. And I believe that this attempt to consolidate the registry budget is it's ill-advised. It's contrary, we believe, to statute. And more importantly, it doesn't save money or increase the quality of services. There was mention, as I said, on May 4th, we went over to the commissions, and there were a bunch of budgets, sent to us between the 11 o'clock and the 1 o'clock vote. And version 5 has ended up, and that's what's in front of you. And I'd ask you down the line to consider a motion, if it's made from fellow advisory board members, to go with version 4, because version 4 was closer to what was discussed on April 13th. When we were here at the advisory board, and I'm not going to get into everything that was said that night, I think we made a compelling case as to why IT is needed, whether it's to the records that everyone who owns a home, the legal title that authenticates your home when you go to sell it or buy it is at the records, or the cybersecurity risks that are going on. What I want to focus on really is this consolidated IT, because when you look at version 4 and you look at version 5 of the budgets, the bottom line is the costs are the same. So what are you losing? You're not saving money. And as a matter of fact, I heard it on May 4th. And I know some of you weren't at the commissioners meeting, and I wouldn't expect you're nice enough to volunteer your time here. But at that meeting, Commissioner Collins said, we're doing it to become more efficient. We're doing it to become, to save money. Well, take a look at this budget. I know there was an advisory board member on April 13th that brought up $10,000 raises that were going to a few different people over 5 years. That's a lot of money. In the commissioner's budget, there's a $17,000 raise for somebody. So when you're saying saving money, then take a look at other parts of the budget. Don't try to balance what's going on at the county on the backs of the registry. Because bottom line is you're not saving money with this consolidation. And we believe what you're doing is really decreasing the quality of services. At the finance committee meeting, Ms. Childs, who's the chair, she's made her remarks as far as consolidation. she said she wants to invest in IT, but I think what people are missing as far as the consolidation, all those people that have written, don't their opinions count for something? I mean, all the testimonials that you've gotten, it's not some campaign. These are people, whether they're attorneys or real estate brokers, or just regular citizens who have responded and recognized that they've gotten service from the Registry of Deeds, and they've gotten service because of an IT department. Now, we did do a PowerPoint, I guess it can't be put up there. So on page
Excuse me,
one,
register, did you provide that to the county?
it's over there now.
No, did you provide the electronic version to the county?
Let's have a hard copy.
Well, if you have it now, you can send it electronically. Kristen can do it. She sends all your emails. Kristen, can you send it over?
Can't do it from here.
Okay. Sorry. Wait, I mean,
I'll just.
that's an example of technology.
Sorry. But on page 2 of the PowerPoint, why has there been an IT department for over 35 years? I have Rich Kennedy, former first assistant. He worked with the registry, he's sitting over here since 1987, and we still get to have him at the registry. We're lucky to have him. Over 35 years, there's been an IT department at that registry. Barry Hannon had it. So these registers that had it before me, and again, some people take this personally, I'm just advocating on behalf of the users of the registry. And that's who we're fighting for. Were those registers wrong to have an IT department? We've had a 2-person IT department since I've been there, since 2002, and it's worked well. And your Ripples report, I'm not going to get into all the Ripples report, but if you really look at the Ripples report, because we had the Abrams report, there were certain flaws in that report. Then we suddenly go to the Ripples report. The registry had no say in selecting the Ripples report, had no say whether this board voted on the Ripples report or not. But I would say the Ripples report supports keeping a permanent on-site direct report dedicated registry information IT technology staff. We have a high level of quality, we have a high level of knowledge and a skilled technology staff, going back to Chuck Taylor, going back to Jim Lippy, and going back to currently now, and Richard Hatch, who was the selected CIO, who didn't, papers weren't approved, was highly qualified from the private sector. And I think the Ripples report shows, if you look at the language and the findings, the Ripples report shows that there is a need for on-site dedicated registry information technology department. And it's needed just to stay as was mentioned at the finance committee by my first assistant, Marguerite Lee, who's here. Our current IT person, he's a one person, and we need more FTEs over there, and the Ripples report says that. But I think it's a shame. He says, hey, I'm just trying to keep the lights on. I'm just one person. We have had a commitment to excellence at the registry over 20 years, and it's because we have a team. We have vision, and the IT is a big part of that team. And also, we're going to have future technology challenges, future needs, and that's why you need an on-site registry IT department. And the Ripples report on our PowerPoint, I want to read on page 19. First, throughout all conversations, including those with staff, colleagues from registries, and industry professionals, we are happy to report that Norfolk operations are running well. The registry is especially meeting the needs of users, such as title search researchers, having accessible and accurate information. So again, you spent $50,000 on the Ripples report, and they have a lot of good findings. Page 6, IT staff are critical in driving innovation in addition to maintaining IT functionality throughout Norfolk. On page 7, again, all in the PowerPoint, for registries across Massachusetts, this shift has been most visibly demonstrated through a significant increase in e-filing utilization among registry users. Of note is the ability for Norfolk registry users to e-file documents to be registered by the land court, allowing e-filing to be accessible to more individuals. And why that's important, it shows why you need an on-site direct report staff. Several of the registers, including myself, were very active in changing the legislation so we could e-file land court documents. And that's the beauty of having an on-site registry IT staff that works for the register and works for the staff. They know the documents, they know the process, and they know the difference between land court documents and recorded land documents. But what makes this significant, the law changed, and in 2017, Governor Baker passed it. Because the on-site IT department, that is a direct report, they knew how important it was. And we, with Rich and myself, we wanted to get the e-recordings going, and they got it done. They got the work done so that we could do e-filing at the land court section of the registry. And why is that important? It shows how when you have an on-site direct report in the registry budget, working in for the registry, like we've had for 35 years, things get done. And things got done now. And the proof's in the pudding. There's 21 registries across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We were the first one to record electronically in the land court. And that's because the IT department, Jim Lindy, Dan Caparata, they knew the priorities that was set by the management team, and they executed on those priorities. And to this day, only 7 out of the 21 registries have the ability to record in the land court. And I'm not going to belabor all the comments you got. I just don't think it's efficient. If all these people are writing to you and expressing how great not only registry services are, but how great the IT staff is, whether they're assessors or towns, the town of Norfolk, even last night, voted to say, to support that the registry should have their own on-site direct report registry staff. It does make a difference. And I'm not going to read everything out of these, PowerPoints, but we put it big in green because it was said by Ed Wheeler, our second assistant, and he came from Middlesex County. And he says, Norfolk is so much better than the state registries and so much better. It's one of the best registries. And he said it to the commissioners on December 8th when we had a hearing on the Abrams report. He said, if it's not broken, why fix it? And the registry IT department is not broken. It's not costing you money because the registry has dedicated deeds excise money to pay for it. And certainly it's more efficient to have it on site. I know you're there on page 4. There's an attorney McKenzie, and he wrote lines of, a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter. They're all going to be reporting to John Cronin, and it will all take care of itself. Well, wait a minute. It does make a difference who's sitting there on IT and who they're reporting to. And I'm not going to read the whole thing Attorney McKenzie said, but he answers the arguments. He answers the arguments that are made that by combining functions at the registry with the county, that doesn't work because of the specialized function of the registry of deeds. It's a specialized function, and it's worked well, for the users, and that's why we need an on-site staff. And you know what? We're consolidating, but even in communities, the chairman's town, Milton. Again, I'm going off the website. General government has an IT department, and the schools have an IT department. Eight IT people. 8 dedicated IT people because they recognize different functions. And I appreciate what Eric Beckerman said at the finance committee meeting, is that you just can't throw somebody into the registry IT and expect them to perform. And in your own towns, yes, some people may have consolidated. I mean, in my town of Norwood, you have the school department has their own IT, general government has their IT. There's a light department, they have their own IT, and actually the library has some IT. I looked at the Brookline Police. The Brookline Police, I know, have a couple of dedicated IT people for their, their operations. I think it is important, however, on page 5, the Abrams report. The Abrams report, it was in the Abrams report, and then they took it out. They chose, who chose? The registry did it, the benchmark counties of Plymouth. And the general government and the county administration IT in Plymouth have 0, Bristol have 0, And now, if this budget gets through version 5, Norfolk County General Government is gonna have 3. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have an IT department, but if you've chosen benchmarks, take a look at the benchmarks you've chosen. And we all went through this with the Abrams report, because their initial report said that the registries down in Bristol County and in Plymouth County did not have IT. And we all know they were mistaken. I know I've been criticized for going after the Abrams report, but I thought that the Abrams report, that everyone was gonna be impartial, and that's my training. You criticize the report, and then the decision makers impartially review the report. But it just seems like there's a predetermined result, which goes back to the June 30th, 2021 vote. But on page 5, I want to point out, there's 2 aspects. The general government, but the registry IT. Now, what we have currently now is Dan Cafarata, and what we have is a temporary person, a young person, a young man who graduated college. He's temporary. I wouldn't exactly call him the equivalent of 3/4, but the Ripples group did, and we went with it. But that one unfilled position makes a real big difference, and they should be at the registry, because again, we are going to, if you don't do that, we're going to be the only registry in Massachusetts with no direct report registry IT, and that reports to the Register of Deeds, that reports to the people who by statute have responsibilities to run the registry. Well, Middlesex South, Abrams report and found that Norfolk County for 3 fiscal years, fiscal 19, 20, and 21, was the 2nd busiest registry in the state. And the only registry that was busier was Middlesex South or Cambridge. And if you look, Middlesex South actually has 4 on-site direct report IT people at that registry. So what I would say is, based on FTEs and based on data, the Norfolk Registry's IT staffing should be at or approaching the 4-person on-site IT staff number. Now, the request we put in, and we had a hearing on this on April 13th, I call it the Mick Jagger Rolling Stones budget. If you remember, I put in for 3. And Director Cronin cut that 3rd person. I put in 3, not knowing what the Ripples report would say. I put 3 in because I think we need more technology and more resources to provide services. And remember, when we submitted the budget in February, there was no war in Ukraine. We're getting notices. We're getting notices from the White House. We're getting notices from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We're getting notices from the Secretary of State's office about being on guard because of IT cybersecurity risks. Well, when we put that budget together of 3, we didn't know any of that because the Ukraine thing happened, is happening now, happened after that. But why that's important? Why did Director Cronin cut that out before the Ripples report was even came out? And again, if you go by the Ripples report, in some aspects of it, it agrees with us. And again, not to go through all the things about FTEs, but on page 9, they say if you have employees under 500, you should have 1 in 18 for IT staff. We have 50. So, if you round up, the chart on the Ripples report, we should have 3 full-time members now to provide the services. And it does make a difference who they report to and where they sit. Essex South, again, a registry that doesn't do as much volume as us. They have 2 full-time equivalents working there. In Bristol, the Bristol registries have 3.75. 3.75, and again, they collect less money. Remember, we collected over $81 million last calendar year, and they record less documents. We recorded 205,000. We were the 2nd busiest registry. And then Plymouth, the Plymouth Register, if you remember, he did not like what the Abrams report wrote, and he used to have 2, but there was budget cuts, but again, a smaller registry. Why do I bring all that up? The chosen benchmark counties Plymouth and Bristol by Abrams, and again, the direction was from the county. The county told them to use, or somebody told them, wasn't the registry, we had no input into the report, said to use Plymouth and Bristol. Well, if those registries have on-site direct report IT, which means they answer to the register, then why shouldn't Norfolk? That should have ended all debate. And that finding should have ended all this IT staff debate. It didn't, and I don't know why it didn't. And again, why should the residents and taxpayers of Norfolk County get less service from the Registry of Deeds than the residents and taxpayers of Plymouth and Bristol counties? Now, the 2-to-1 voting county budget, if that gets implemented, we're going to be the only registry in Massachusetts not to have IT support or an on-site IT staff that's going to help the people and help the users. And again, Norfolk's registry has been a great, I hope we embrace that it's a great registry. If not, I'll get into it. But I think that was established at the last meeting, and I think it's been established by the citizens that have voiced their opinion. But why is the Norfolk registry being dismantled? And that's what this vote is doing. It's dismantling it. Let's go back to the Ripples group. 3 models out of the 4 that were on the Ripples group showed the registry having on-site dedicated staff working for the registry, not the county. And and the models had up to 3 full-time equivalent persons working as direct reports at the Norfolk Registry of Deeds. So to me, any proposal that allows the registry to keep its on-site direct report IT staff is a better choice than what's been voted on or what will be voted on today. It's a zero on-site direct report IT staff. And again, I appreciate what Commissioner Stady said on March 4th, that he was trying to do it as a compromise so that down the line, maybe it goes to consolidation, but you move slowly, and you move slowly so you provide good services. And the Ripples report on page 25, page 7 of the PowerPoint, as separate divisions, the registry and county would have dedicated IT staff available on staff. The 2-headed option is working out relatively well today. So it's working. And again, we're not afraid of change. But to me, this is bad change because it's going to take a while to implement consolidation. And again, we try to run the registry like a business. And to me, in the private sector, if you work for a company, the boss, you answer to the boss, you answer to the people running the company. And that's how work gets done. And that's how work should get done at the county level in government. Page 8, again, not to belabor it, I know some items were sent out, but these were findings of the Ripples group that supports the need for more on-site direct report staff at the registry. And I think it's because they've done a great job.
How are you?
I mean, the numbers, there are a lot of numbers. I mean, look at the technology infrastructure. We have 96 computers versus the county that has 19. We have 38 printers versus the county that has 13. We have 10 scanners. And again, some of them are huge book scanners that cost $20,000. We have 24 laptops. We have a disaster recovery office. So on page 11, our infrastructure is so much larger, and that's why you need somebody. And you could read Attorney McKenzie's well-reasoned articulation why you need somebody that knows the registry, that has to be there so that we can deliver services. Look at the external technology users, e-file users, over 2,400. County, 19 computers. County website users per month, 3,523. A lot of these hits are searches to access the registry of deeds website. Online users, 2.3 million, 2,350 online users who do research. Consumer notification. I know you see Newt Gingrich saying, and sign up in case there's any fraud. You're not preventing the fraud. Our IT department put that in because they were direct reports. So you can sign up for free in Norfolk County and get a notice If anything in your name comes by, William, I'm William P. O'Donnell, but William J. O'Donnell, William T. O'Donnell, you get an email and you can check it out. Someday it might be a fraud. You say, that's not the deed. I didn't sign that deed, or I didn't sign that mortgage. We have over 2,100 people that have signed up for that service. And our website hits are over 22,000 per month. So to me, you know, again, I would echo what the Ripple's report said, that it's well run, that the IT at the registry is well run, and that this adopted budget is ignoring, if it's adopted, is ignoring local realtors, title examiners, attorneys, residents, all who have pled and really made the case, I think, to leave the registry with an on-site staff. And that's why it's important. And again, I'm not going to belabor it, and maybe I have already. And if I've spoken too long, I apologize, because it's just, it's incredible to me that we've even got to here. I believe people like, as registers, my philosophy is to try to leave it better than it was. Paul Harold improved upon what Barry Hannon did. I hope I improve upon what Paul Harold did. But they had IT departments and they were allowed to run the registry. And it's to me unfathomable that something that has been doing so good, and you know, that doesn't mean, as Commissioner Stakey had said, not to speak for him on Bay 4th, we have to work with people. I get that. But there's no reason we can't have 2 on-site direct report people like we should have. And we'll work through it with the county side. But to me, you really gotta look at this closely. And again, too many people have sided and said the registry needs to keep doing what it's doing. And we will work to improve, we always do. But don't anyone say that this registry hasn't been innovative. Don't say that this registry has not been on the cutting edge of technology. Don't say the registry hasn't worked, looking in the future that we may need to have new systems and things of that sort. We've worked on it and we've done it with a great staff, starting back with Chuck Phelan. So on the advisory board,
Chuck.
Yeah.
Mr. Phelan said he was president.
Chuck's done it, you know, well, again, I didn't know. I thank Chuck for his service. I thank Jim Limby. And again, I thank my staff. But really, I think 35 years of a track record. You know, those registers weren't wrong. Those county commissioners weren't wrong. Because you know what? I was a county commissioner. And I just want to run the registry. But I let Barry Hannon and Paul Howard run the registry. I let Cliff Marshall and Jack Flood and Mike Bellotti run the sheriff's department. As one of them said, I won't identify him, he said, if you try to take our IT department when you were commissioner, I'd be doing everything you're doing. We try to work with the other elected officials, and that's what government should be about. And I just ask you on behalf of the residents and taxpayers to consider and to vote an amended budget, which was presented to the commissioners. There were 2 versions. It's the same dollar amount, and it's just an interim step that allows us to have 2 registry IT department reporting to us so that we can get on with the business of running the registry, and then we'll work through all this. Thank you very much.
Question?
Excuse me, registered, would you mind standing for questions? Is that appropriate? Come to the light. Ms. Donahue of Norwood, you're recognized.
Thank you. Helen Donahue, Norwood. In trying to find out what the problem is here, I've listened to an allegation that has to do with a change in the method about copies of the registry deeds. Could you expound on that for me, please, Mr. O'Donnell?
Sure, and I know this came up, I know Ed Wheeler and Rich Kennedy were at a meeting with some of the people on the finance committee. The copies, you know, things have changed. The last meeting, they said something about, something from, you know, how come things are down from 2013? You know, how come the Red Sox only won 1 championship since 2013? It's been a change. You know, electronic recording, for instance. 80% of our documents now come through electronic recording. Now, let's look at mortgages. say there's 50,000 mortgages. If 80% are coming in electronically, that's 40,000 documents. In the old days, when I used to do it, and used to go see Rich in the 80s and 90s, you'd have to order copies and get a duplicate certificate copy and bring it back to the bank. Now with electronic recording, they retain the original. It's been authorized by the federal government and the state legislature. And again, the reason we have electronic recording, we had a great on-site IT staff that did it. So why does that matter? Well, think about it, 40,000 documents, they don't need to get copies of everything. Also, as you can see, the desk over there, you should see my desk at the registry. I'm a paper person. The new attorneys, they're not ordering paper. You know, some of them could be scanning the document once. And let's keep it. So there's been mores, there's been changes on operations from electronic recording. The days of ordering, you know, one mortgage could be 40 pages. So you can figure out the math that it's going to be a decrease. As far as these records at the registry, Barry Hannon did it, Paul Harrell did it, and again, I know because the internet was just starting, again, we didn't have email when I got there in 2002, and the internet was just going. That's why, you know, Chuck Fader, we came up with Chief Information Officer. We knew things were coming. We look at it, if you're online, you're viewing these documents just like you're viewing the books at the registry. And remember this, the Secretary of State in their registries don't charge for the documents because they say it's a public record. So the $1 that gets charged, we get charged. So, you know, there's been all kinds of things. We send over the estimates. We send the monies over monthly that we get. That's what we get. And there's been a decrease, but please remember this, out of the 21 registries, 13 are state registries, you get 0 because the state secretary says they're public records and you shouldn't even be charged for them.
Thank you.
Is there another member who wants to ask a question? Mr. Papp, you're recognized from Weymouth.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I just had a question. So just because I don't know all the iterations of the budget, what is the difference between version 4 of the budget that you're advocating for and version 5, which is the...
If I could interject, Mr. Papp, I think that question should be directed to the county director.
Very good. Okay. So then, just because you mentioned it, is that all right to ask that question now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I just think it's the direction. That's okay.
Sure. So what is the difference between version 4 and version 5?
Strictly the technology consolidation.
That's the only thing.
Yes.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chairman, if I could just one more. Does or would the IT department, the 2 FTEs, would they handle not just the infrastructure? What else do they handle? Like website, user interface, social media, apps that we currently use or don't use or may use in the future? Is it all the above?
It is all of the above. I think the IT people that we have on site, they deal with hardware, they deal with the software, they deal with the personnel. You know, they're not just personnel, but they know everybody in the building. They know all the workers. More importantly, you know, I'm talking about land court, and some of the attorneys may know the difference between land court or registered land and recorded land. Well, these IT people know that. And these IT people, because they're interwoven into the fabric of the registry, they're not at the golf course or anywhere else. They're at the registry. And the reason you have to be there, we're a race notice state in Massachusetts. You race to the registry. Whoever gets there first wins. Or think about when you sold your house or you bought a house. These documents are coming in more electronically. If there's a hang up, we get on it right away because you have people who have documents that have been sent in from Quincy or Weymouth or anywhere around the Commonwealth through electronic recording, and we got to get it solved right away. So that transaction, no one's going to give you the keys to the house usually until the money gets passed, and the money doesn't get passed till the deed gets recorded at the house. So to your point, the IT is involved in every aspect of our registry. Yes, you know, I've got a great management team. They're here today. We set visions, but I think by setting a vision of what we want the registry, the IT is a key component of that team, not only to drive services, not only day-to-day operations, but also to make sure that the citizens and the people that use the registry get the best service they can. And even before this dawn of the computers, I can say in the 1980s, I thought the Norfolk registry was one of the best. And I gotta say, out of all this, I wish we weren't fighting like this. I gotta say, the comments that have come from people, I think it's clear that we at the Norfolk registry are one of the best, although some of the people, well, we are the best registries, and that's because we have an on-site direct report IT department.
Thank you. Mr. Boynton, you're recognized. You had raised your hand before. Mr. Boynton of Medway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Michael Boynton. Through you to the register.
Please do.
Last meeting, I had requested the details on, I believe, what Ms. Donahue spoke about. As it relates to the drop in user access fees. Is there a correlation, has there been any research since that meeting done to the amount of actual activity, user activity requesting documents versus the reduction in revenue? So in other words, is there a correlating reduction in documents that have been requested through online access as it relates to the, let's see, in FY16, which FY16 appeared to be the high year at $765,000. Total collected down to $227,000 last year. So that's a $500,000 drop in that period of time. Is there a corresponding drop in online access?
Online access, everyone has access to it. I would say that it goes to the fact what the Ripples report said. For instance, 80% of the documents now are recorded electronically, and therefore you don't need copies of everything like you did in the past.
So then, through you,
Please do, Mr. Boynton.
But I don't know,
Excuse me, register. If you wish to recognize somebody, can we, Mr. Boynton has a question first to ask you, and then if you wish to recognize someone, please. We just want to maintain order. We have a Zoom component here. I just want to make sure everything's good.
Is it okay, Mr. Chair?
I didn't hear Mr. Boynton's question.
I'll yield for the moment.
You yield? Oh, thank you, Mr. Boynton. Go ahead, register. Mr. Kennedy,
Again,
recognize.
I've spoken as to, 50,000 more for that's just one component of the two.
But you're recognizing Register
Rich,
Kennedy,
yeah, maybe take
who now is
better shot at
register, first assistant registrar, is now a consultant on the payroll of the registry of deeds. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Kennedy. I'm from Rentham, originally from Norway, and I've worked at the registry of deeds for over 34 years. And I think to the question that the gentleman asked here, the changes in the technology, the changes in the way things are recording, the fact that the building was closed for almost 2 years has a lot to do with the reduction in copies. There's other technological changes. The watermarks that we have on the website, when people look at it, it's supposedly they're enough so that it's not a clear copy. It's not cannot be used as a certified copy or anything like that. But it seems that that must be what people are happy with. They're not ready to pay the dollar or send the money in to get a copy like that. Stuff is readily available. We've had to take steps because of the public records law. It was changed a few years ago. And we are recognizable of the fact that we couldn't spend half the time, half the staff answering questions, sending out copies to people just because they wanted to get a copy of their deed. As well, the Secretary of State, the public records, they belong to the people, and we have to make it a decent effort to provide them. And if we had to, I think that the demand for official records, public records, we have people contact us all the time under the Public Records Act, and it's the law is very intense. There's a lot of things a lot of hoops we have to jump through just to make sure it gets done, and that was another thing that's affected the copy comment.
And I appreciate that. There's been a number of factors, I'm certain. I'm guessing, and this should be, maybe I'm totally wrong with this, but this should be kind of an easy one, that based upon the successes of the IT department and the work that they've done, to be able to simply hit a couple of buttons, and I'm oversimplifying that, I appreciate it. But to be able to look at it and say, in fiscal year 2017, at 700, fiscal year 2016, again, the high point, at $765,000, the Registry of Deeds processed X number of online computer access documents requests. And in fiscal year 22, this much less in that period of time. I don't want to get into speculation or accusations. That's not what it's about. This is just simply trying to better understand how we lost $500,000 a year in revenue over that period of time. And again, it compounds. I don't know what the real number would be. We can put a potential escalation factor, but in real dollars, from 16 to 22, it's $500,000 plus. So those are the important pieces to me as we're looking at trying to figure out the success of the IT department, reports of the IT department, and more importantly, how the bottom line of the county is looking as it relates to this. These are the fees that are directly, correct me if I'm wrong, through you to.
Please do.
Bill, I understand this correctly. This is the one aspect you have direct control over in terms of the management of the registry, whether or not someone reports their fee for that. That's really based upon statute. That's based upon the deeds stamp, the tax stamp, et cetera. So this is something that the registry itself can track in terms of direct the users, the end users, as you talked about several times, the taxpayers, the residents, et cetera. These are the fees that they directly pay to the registry. That's the one piece you have direct control over, correct?
We have responsibility for all fees that are collected. So you're mentioning online fees, which we sent an estimate over 150,000 for this.
Point of order.
Mr. Ryan of Braintree, you
Just
recommend.
answer the question.
Well, the question is that we collect all fees, not just online.
You asked
We
me to
collect
collect
fees excise.
He asked, you have direct oversight with the collection.
Yes. we
Thank you,
collect
Register.
fees, excise
Thank you.
fees.
So you have direct control, is that correct?
We're responsible for collecting, and we collected over $82 million.
No.
So
Over the
we-
online fees, I think that's Mr. Boynton, is that your
Yes, we send
question?
it to the treasurer.
Register, please just answer the question to Mr. Ryan's point. Do you or do you not have control over the online fees? And to Mr. Boynton's point, have they dropped several $100,000 over the past few years? That is, I believe, Mr. Boynton, is that your question?
The question I still have is, can we do the actual direct tie, drop in revenue to drop in documents requested? That's the piece. So when I go online, if I go to the registry and I want a copy of my deed, there's a thing where I have to enter my credit card information or whatever it may be. So I'm assuming that based upon the drop in revenue, that there is a corresponding drop in actual requests for documents that should be tracked or would be easily tracked through the IT system. And I'm all set, I'm good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boynton. Does anyone else have questions of the registrar or the registry of deeds? Mrs. Donahue of Norwood, you're recognized.
Thank you. Helen Donahue, Norwood. Another source of contention that I've been learning about is about potential political involvement. Mr. O'Donnell, registrar, are you involved in any other political campaigns at this time other than your own?
I have enough time. I have enough troubles with my campaign right now. And again, I'm not up for election. I wish I was up for election this year. I mean, because I think the people feel that, we're getting good feedback on the registry. We may not prevail tonight, but that you fight the fight, you do what's right on behalf of the taxpayers and all that. But look, I'm here to do my job as registrar. And it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter what people do politically.
Second part of my question, have you had any adverse words with people who work for the county commissioner's office?
Well, you can watch the meeting on May 4th, when I was told that I got the registry budget when I did it, so there were words right on the video. But again.
I mean individual.
No.
Thank you.
It's all over.
So may I ask a question to the member from Norwood? Are you saying that, Mr. O'Donnell, if you could remain at the podium, please? I don't understand where you're coming from. Are you saying that, was there an altercation? Was there inappropriate conduct by the registrar or by a county employee?
Absolutely not. I'm not
So,
saying that.
so what are you saying?
I'm just.
That's very serious, and I
I'm
think the
clearing-
commissioners would want to hear that.
I want the air clear on the record in a public hearing. That's my purpose.
But what's your question?
For both sides.
No, I understand. But if you're saying that there's an allegation that there was inappropriate and then an adverse interaction, if it was inappropriate or in some way, I mean, that's something. to
Mr.
consider.
Chair,
Yes.
I didn't say that.
Spec-
I asked you a question.
Right, about adverse interaction. Is that
And
correct?
I said, I asked a question. I didn't make any allegation
Okay,
of any
that's fair.
incident.
And there's,
Fair enough.
look at,
Register, you're not recognized. My colleague from Brookline has a question, I believe.
I do have a question. I don't believe that supporting the consolidated budget this evening is at all a reflection of against the registry, by the way. I would just add this, preface my question with that. I would say that we are not county versus registry. We are all working together here as advocates for every user of the county, those who use the registry as well as other services. So should the budget pass this evening, register, the consolidated budget that does end up consolidating the IT services, would you be willing and would you confirm that you would cooperate and work hard with the county to make that successful?
I've worked hard
No,
my whole life. No, Madam Chair, I, you know, you asked that question, I'll just set it straight. I've worked hard. There's disagreements on that. And if people don't like the fact that I've been advocating on behalf of people and on behalf of the users, then I'm willing to take it. But I have always worked and cooperated and run a pretty good operation. And let me tell you, you know, the registry, you say, oh, it's going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. The users have spoken. Why do we not listen to the users? Because some people have said, boy, I've got.
Excuse me, registered. You're out of order. The question was directed to you. I asked my colleague to repeat the question.
Would you cooperate and work together with the county to make sure that we have a very successful, if we pass this budget, which we don't know if we will or not yet, but would you work with the county to successfully implement IT enhancements and improvements?
I have to work with the county. Obviously, I will. However, I believe it's a.
Thank you so much. I
It's a-
appreciate that.
It's a.
So for point of clarification, you will
It's a
work with the
risk.
county if this vote is approved.
First of all,
Register, this is a direct question. Will you work with the county? You can say yes, no, you can say I refuse to comment. That's fine.
I will work cooperatively with the county.
Thank you.
We have an operation to run.
Thank you.
The
So
money-
register, I'm
the
sorry,
money is going to the
you
town.
have sucked up about 45 minutes here, which is great. But I do want to afford my colleagues who may have questions an opportunity to ask
I
questions.
apologize for going on. but
No,
it
that's
is-
okay. You had some questions, but I want to make sure that the answers are succinct because we are going on 20 minutes of 8 now. And I'm actually going, with all due respect to my friend from Norwood, you have asked several questions. I want to recognize my colleague from the town of Norfolk, Mr. Calca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the register, as an employee of a SaaS company in Boston, technology is something we work with on a daily basis, interacting with CIOs and CTOs across many different industries. One of the things that jumped out at me from the Brooklyn report was the clear disconnect in the approach to IT infrastructure between the county and the registry. It was identified that while the county has moved over to virtual servers, cloud backup, and SaaS applications, the registry has decided to take an approach which extends legacy software, updated IBM hardware, and on-site apps. Can you talk a little bit about that approach and how you would view that in the future with this new role?
For instance, our emails are in the cloud. So, you know, we have a closed system to protect those records. And again, we have InterSystems was a consultant for both the county and the registry. And they actually wrote a report saying that the registry should have on-site staff. And they are proponents of the cloud, but as they said, it's not for everybody. So we have to look through that. But to the representative from Norfolk, it's hard to stay on the cutting edge when we haven't had a registry CIO there since last June. So I'm not averse to looking at the cloud. I'm not averse to looking at a document management system. Rich Kennedy, Margaret Lee, Ed Wheeler, they can tell you, we looked at some of those groups that were mentioned in the Rose report, TriMan and groups like that. And then COVID came. As a matter of fact, in March of 2020, we had another meeting with TriMan. The Registers Association is looking. The Secretary of State has a role in this as well. And he has hired a consultant to look at future systems. So we're not averse to future systems. I might add that the county has just within the last couple of months done that. But, I know, I'm not averse to. But again, any changes in systems, you need IT on site to spec it out and to evaluate it and implement it, like we did back in '02.
Thank you, Register. Register, we have Mr. Polito from Dedham on Zoom who has a question. I believe it's just Mr. Polito at this point.
He was the only member of the advisory.
He's the only member of the advisory board with the question. Mr. Polito,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions are not to the Register, just the overall general questions about the budget.
excuse me, Mr. Polito, this would be directed to the Register. The deliberations of the advisory board will follow the public hearing. So
Okay,
if you have a question of the Register, feel free to ask.
well, no, just about the budget, the process, how we get to where we are today.
That would be something in the deliberations over the budget. This is specific to the Register's presentation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You'll have an opportunity soon. Mrs.
Thank
Don, I'm sorry. Our new friend from Medfield, welcome.
Second time probably asking another dumb question, but
I'm sure it's.
this is Gus Murphy from Medfield. The issue that I'm trying to get straight in my head is to get some sense of the impact of whichever way this goes on the services that are being made available to the public. So I have a hypothetical question for you. You had shown some slides that talked about hardware that you have, and we're talking about staffing positions. Recognizing that in COVID, everybody learned how to do things almost without regard to where they were physically. My question is this: to what extent does the service that the registry currently provides, to what extent is it dependent on the physical presence of stuff or people at the registry, as opposed to, say, a different hypothetical that says everything gets consolidated at the IT department? There are 3 or 2 full-time equivalent people with the requisite skills to be able to carry out the services that the registry is currently providing. Would it be possible for that service that you're delivering right now to be delivered through an IT department with the right staff and the right equipment located wherever it needed to be, without that staff having to be physically located in the registry? Or I'm just trying to get how much of this has to be literally at the registry versus it doesn't matter.
I would say you have to be at the registry. And again, IT people could come in virtually. I know during the pandemic, we had people working remotely just to do things. And as a matter of fact, for the pandemic, and we were operational every workday. We didn't miss one workday from March 10th. It was because of the IT staff. They worked really hard, and you had to coordinate everything, because remember, the finish line is at the registry as far as documents. So to me, right now, people are working at the registry. You need the people there. So when, at the recording counter, if something is, they're recording people that walk in, but they're also recording the documents electronically. If there's something wrong, we have the IT staff here. So for me, it's just responsiveness. And don't go by my sake, there were a lot of people that wrote. You're lucky you didn't get any, because I know some people aren't happy with it. But a lot of people wrote about the responsiveness in the IT department, including some assessors. I know the Norfolk assessor was saying how the IT department was really responding, because they have obligations as assessors with the Department of Revenue, which we have obligations in sending our monies to. So I would say that you need that direct report there, because it's an operation. And I liked what was said, at least, and again, I'm not trying to quote Commissioner State, because he'll tell me if I'm wrong, but it was an interim step, a step to have the registry have some people, get some people in the county and move it forward. But even the Ripples report says consolidation could take 24 months, 12 to 24 months. We're understaffed as it is. We have one person, 2 persons is probably cutting it, but at least, one person was out there. We always had somebody there, and they coordinated their vacations and time off. We don't have that luxury. So I would, again, push for the on-site.
Thank you, Register. Mr. Cleveland or Franklin, I'm sorry, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I'm gonna push the thing in the other direction. If the staff were consolidated in an IT department, and the staff, 1 or 2 staff were seconded to the registry, so that the administrative process still has a consolidated staff. The physical deployment of that staff involves some sort of presence at the registry. Would that be workable?
Well, if it's voted in, it's workable, but to me, it's not. In years past, all the registers, they have fiduciary statutory responsibility to run the register, and fiduciary responsibility. It's working now. Now, if there's a problem, what I got a call, not call some foreign country, but to me, I need that immediate thing. And let me tell you, February 6, 2021, there was a fire at the registry. I got called at 6:45 in the morning to come down, and I was there when the fire was still going. Dick Stady came by, the commissioner. But we called, because they direct reports, called my senior management staff comes in, but my IT comes in. We were up and running Monday, we didn't miss anything. I didn't have to make another call, I didn't do this, that's what direct report is. That's how it is in the private sector, and that's how it should be at the registry of deeds, because we try to run it like a business.
Thank you.
To my colleague from Medfield, are you
Yes, thank you.
satisfied? Mrs. Donahue, I want to recognize my colleague from Franklin who has not spoken yet, and you will be recognized. Mr.
Thank you,
Padula.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of the comments and calls I've got were concerned about having people on premises. And my understanding has always been that there's going to be bodies on premises. But to the register, Phil, is it your understanding that, and this is my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the two bodies that are supposed to be there that are in the budget are still going to be at the registry? Is that correct? They still want to have those people there?
Under the version that you have in front of you, version 5, Dean Caparata works at the registry. That's the only person. The top person would be splitting duties somehow between the county and the registry. So there's only, in version 5, there's only 3 positions. Version 4 gives 2 positions. So I know some people disagree with this. I just think if someone works at the registry, is in the registry budget, works for the register, it's a better business model.
Maybe someone can correct me. So if there's 3 people in the budget, there's one person that say sits at a different building than the registry. But my understanding, the budget has 2 people in the registry, which is what we want to make sure we have. That's what's needed. But am I incorrect? Will someone correct me if I'm wrong? The budget is for 2 people at the registry, like it was before this other person has left, and now a new person to be like the chief CIO. Is that correct?
I would direct that to the commissioners.
Thank you. We actually talked about this during the finance committee meeting. And I'm not the greatest IT person at all. And so actually it was Commissioner Stady who made a recommendation after the first study that we go to an IT study and register and all, that was a great idea. So we went to the Ripple group. And they recognize the different positions that we have at the registry right now. We have a full-time position, Mr. Caparata. There's a person who's temporary, who's, I think they deemed it like 0.75% of a person because the number of hours that they work. It's the commissioner's understanding that the IT person will eventually, the CIO who comes in will help to make the decisions as to how many staff are where. But the plan is that the individuals who are working at the registry right now will still be there. They'll still be at the exact same desk. Nothing is gonna change with the people who are there right now. It just means that their budget would run through the IT department, through the administration.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Please.
To Mr. Combs. So what if the register comes back and says, I need 3 people, and here's why I need 3 people. So you'd be in a position, or the commissioners would be in a position to make sure that he has the extra person he needs on staff?
As I started out, I'm not the IT person, right? So the person that comes in as the IT director for that department, if they came to us and said we need 5 people to register, we'd say fine. It's not a problem.
Let me just interject. My name being used tonight. I will just say this for the record, at the commissioners meeting, when the vote was taken, I advocated for additional staff at the registry. And I was assured by comments that basically, once this new department is set up, and it's only fair, let the new director evaluate it. And if he comes back and says in 3 months, or perhaps a year, when he's preparing his budget, commissioners, we need more people, I fully would support that. But that's a question we really can't answer. It's speculation. But to your earlier point, Peter, you're right. I mean, it's really, you have to get over the mindset. And it's a difficult thing. We got to stop thinking about the registry versus the commissioners. We're having an IT department, but physically, from what I've been reading, 2 will be at the registry.
Like it is now.
Right,
It's supposed
so
to be now.
It's just, it's basically, it really is gonna be in terms of responsibility and oversight, whether or not the commissioners be overseeing the person, or if it remains the same. I did advocate it in position. I was in the minority. I understand that. I respect that. I moved on. That's how you do business in politics. But what we're saying here is, to answer your question, there would be 2 people at the registry, and it would be 3. In fact, it's more than 3. It's really, it's in the budget for a little more than that, but whatever. But that's, I hope I answered your question.
It did. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mrs. Donahue from Norwood, you're recognized.
Thank you. Helen Donahue, Norwood. 2 things. I'm 76 years old now,
You don't look it.
but I've been going to public meetings and hearings because I'm interested since I was 12. And this is the first time that I've heard a person say, oh, you used up so many minutes. And that was a little rough, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate your comment, but I also recognize there are people waiting to speak, and this is how long it's taken. So I appreciate that.
Everyone has been waiting in turn, and you've done a nice job of calling upon everyone, but that still doesn't justify it.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment.
My second comment has to do with the question of Mr. O'Donnell. And could you briefly expound, give some information about the additional problems that the registry will encounter in relation to fraudulent documents?
Well, again, I'm gonna rely on what people have written. People have written why we need an on-site thing, and we just have one person there now, Dan Caparata, and under this version 5, we only, Dan Caparata won't be working for the registry anymore, he'll be working for the county director, but that's just one person. The other people, the other person, Mark McDonald, who just got a $9,000 raise, he's working for the county. And then whoever the other person in would be split. What we had with Chuck Phelan was there, what we had with Jim Limby was there, there's 2 people there. Dan Caparata has been there, and Jim Limby. We've had 2 dedicated people. We don't have that. So problems, there could be all kinds of problems. If people don't think the documents aren't a target for cybersecurity, ransomware and hacks, they are. If people don't think that collecting $82 million doesn't worry me, yes, we send it to the Department of Revenue. Yes, it gets accounted for. Yes, it comes back to the communities and public and CPA money and other things. But it can be hacked. You saw in Quincy, allegedly there was $3.5 million that was taken out of the retirement fund. So these things can happen. They're real. And I just believe having someone who's a direct report on site there, that, I mean, I have to advocate for that because the registry users are advocating for it. And I believe it's the right course of action, and not to do it, I think, is dismantling the registry of deeds, not to have what we had, 2 on site.
In that regard, my final comment.
Please go ahead, Mrs. Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To my fellow board members, in Norwood this week, we had to commend a Norwood police officer who had to work with the FBI. And it's only in regard to a car purchase. Someone came, bought an $83,000 car fraudulently, and then had a certified check fraudulently made and used. And so our Norwood detective worked with the FBI in South Carolina and here and there. They got the person. This is only a car. How about your house?
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Mr. Padula, you're recognized again.
Just a brief follow-up, and I'm not sure who can explain it to me. The register said he's gonna have he only has 1 person. Is he supposed to only have 1? Or is he supposed to have 2 like it was before? So someone clear that piece up, because he's telling me he's got 1 person over there. How many people is he gonna have over there? It's my understanding it's supposed to be the same or similar to the way it is now.
As of July 1st, 2021, Mr. Padula, the Registry of Deeds had 2 full-time employees on their payroll, CIO and Mr. Caparata. They also had a temp, his name's Cole. As of this plan for July 1st, 2022, for FY '23, the registry will have Mr. Caparata stationed at the registry, Cole 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and full access and use of the CIO, who is also going to be available on July 1st, hopefully, if the hiring works out. That's the plan. So in fact, it's the same exact model that started fiscal year 22. How often will the CIO sit in the registry as opposed to the commissioner's office? I can assure you if that hire came in on July 1st, he or she will be over the registry virtually full-time immediately to learn what's going on, just like any other new hire would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So may I ask a question?
Please, Mr.
Foxborough. So given what these two gentlemen have just said, the number of physical bodies at the registry will stay the same, and it's just the formal internal reporting, which is invisible to the public, that will change.
Effectively, that's correct.
Are there other questions of the register?
I just would like to address that on July 1st, the register CIO, the registry CIO that was to be replaced, the vote didn't happen. They said the Abrams report was coming out in 2 weeks. So it didn't come in, right? It was just one person, Dan Caparata. And that person did come in temporary, but because it was temporary, he's left. So effectively, we have one. We should have two there. And again, we all were interns, we all were young people who were apprentices, but to me, you should have the registry, call it whatever you want, registry director of technology, registry CIO, and Dan Caparata. That's what version 4, which was what was discussed April 13th, when you said it was in the budget, it was in the budget. That's what was discussed. That's what should be there. Because you had 2 full-time people there. But we haven't had 2 full-time people. The person that was the registry CIO that came in temporary, he only worked 4.5 months because he finally said, hey, temporary, this doesn't work for me. That was a great boss. He was a good person. So out of this fiscal year, we've only had somebody there 4.5 months. We only had 2 people, and he was just learning. So Dan Caparata is the only one we have right now. Again, they keep mentioning the temp. We should have brought him here. He's a young guy, just like we were, but when you're young, you'll learn.
Are there any other questions of the register? Register, if I may, you did call out the town of Milton. Can you share with me that information about the town of Milton? Because there are 2 members
Sure,
here, a commissioner and a.
Again, I went online because, in your town, it says information technology, you get it's online, and it has Robert Mallett, he was information technology, that's on the general government side. And then on the town side, on the school side, they have a technology department on their website, and they have 8 people. So even
If I may, so the town side, which covers the police department, the fire department, E911, all departments and agencies other than the schools has 1 person. Is that correct? I just want to differentiate because this is differentiating between the county operations, the registry, and the schools. So the town of Milton operates with 1 IT person for the whole town, including revenue receipts through the town. That's what you have in front of you. Is that correct? I just want to verify that, not the schools, the town.
the point I'm making is.
I'm not asking the point. I'm asking, is that correct or not? I don't want people to think that there are 9 people working in the town of Milton on IT when the town side has 1 person.
That's what I said.
Rob Mallett, that's correct. But the inference was that there were 8 people. We just want to differentiate that. But that's like saying this school, the Aggie has these people. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the county. I just want to differentiate. Rob Mallett's a friend of mine. He's a good guy, does an unbelievable job. And he does it himself, including the E911 stuff and all the things that people have mentioned. So I just wanted to clarify that since you called the town of Milton out.
I'm not calling it out. I mean, what I'm saying is there's different governance structures.
Well, and Rob Mallett reports to the select, the town administrator.
We're trying to advocate for the registry as to why we've had it like this.
Well, that's
We have 20
register. I'm not asking that. I just wanted to verify that the information you're saying is that the town of Milton has 1 IT director that covers everything but the schools.
Off their website.
Is that correct?
Is 1 information technology person, and on the school side.
But I didn't ask you the school side. 1 person on the town side. Is that correct?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, register. Thank you. Are there any other questions of the register? We have a couple of people online, and who are we recognizing first?
Three, Mr. Chair, we have Ms. Judy Gangle and Ms. Patricia Schmee. I apologize for not pronouncing that correctly.
And are these questions of the register, or are they questions of, for the public hearing?
I believe they are questions for the public hearing.
For the public hearing, so register, you've been up for a long time, you can relax for a couple of minutes. These are questions for the public hearing, but please be available if you wish to answer any questions.
Ms. Gangle, if you would like to unmute yourself and speak first.
Ms. Gangle, this is Joe Reardon, the chair. If you could kindly recognize yourself and let us know what town you represent or where you're from.
I can recognize myself even without a mirror in front of me.
There you go.
I'm from the town of Randolph, and forgive
Thank
me
you.
for not having my camera open. It's been a bad hair day. The wind has been pretty
We
strong.
get it.
Yeah, and so has a lot of other stuff that's going on. I actually have a couple of points I'd like to make. I know that Mr. Connors knows me well. I've lived in Randolph 50 years. I've been involved in town government and local, state and federal with tenacity, for which I'm well known. And as such, some of what I'm going to say will be duplicating some of the things that the registrar has indicated in what he presented. That's only because great minds tend to think alike. So I will accept your indulgence, and I will repeat some of that because I have a different approach to all of this. First of all, let me just clarify. I am an elected official in Randolph. I'm a trustee of the publicly owned Stetson Hall, but I'm speaking tonight strictly in my own behalf and not representing any other person or body. I don't want anything to be misinterpreted in that regard. Stetson Hall, as you may know, was donated to the town by Amasa Stetson in 1842 and has been on the National Register of Historic Places for about 11 years now. As such, because the town of Randolph was incorporated in 1793, which is a familiar date for those of you that are involved in the official end of the registry, we birthed ourselves at the same time the registry did. Therefore, Randolph, more than a lot of other towns, has 100% of its skin in this game. That is why I wish to make a few statements. I also will conclude with a question, but I will make some statements first, some talking points that I jotted down. I originally jotted down close to 20, but I'll be more succinct. The hour.
If I could interject for one moment, and I apologize for this. There are other people waiting on queue through Zoom.
I do understand
I
that.
just want to recognize that. Thank you.
Yeah, I do understand that. And I've actually been on since 5 o'clock because I started with the finance committee. So I've been very indulgent. And even though I'm going to be 80 in August, and I must say, I'm a hybrid myself. From the neck down, I'll be 80. And from the neck up, I'm going on 25. So I hope you'll accept that.
Please do.
I beat out the former speaker. I do realize there are other people waiting. So I just want to tell you that my approach to this is other than the financial one. I know that's important, but you know, there's an old expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the good intentions of all civil servants, and I'm one, is to keep the cost down and keep the budget trimmed as much as possible. However, there is another side to civic service, and that is doing right for the people. That's what we were all elected to do, or volunteered to do, or were appointed to do. Therefore, a couple of the points I wish to make. I have been to the registry on a number of occasions. Among them, when we bought our house and I came to see it in the books. Secondly, I've been there at an open house when instruction and help was given to those of us who came there. So we would have some rudimentary ability to understand how one accesses the Registry of Deeds records online using the computers that are on the tables in the hallway there. I think that is a very prime important aspect. We need to feel that our public officials are connected to us, not just behind a monitor on a computer, but in person. And this is also inspirational for the youth who may want to have a career in civic service. If they don't see it, they can't be it. That's an expression that has found a very strong place in our society today. Therefore, I think it's important to have people in the presence of the people coming in. I also want to point out that because the registry contains all the information that any business potentially looking to move into Norfolk County from elsewhere in Massachusetts or anywhere else in the world has to access it. And if we don't have the means to give them rapid response like they do in hospitals, a rapid response, a code blue for their needs to get information, we are discouraging people for whom there are other locations where they can get the information with the proper speed and assistance and presence of information. So my thought is, you know, if one person can make a difference, and I am known to want to be that one person, think how much two people can make a difference. And I would like to say that I also have listened before I logged on tonight. I listened to that December, I think it was a December meeting that the registrar referenced with Attorney Kennedy. And when I heard the verification of what I knew already, that there were errors from the Abramson group, I heard the specifics of what those errors were. I want to conclude and eliminate all the other things that I've had in what I wanted to say by asking this question, and that is, how did this Abramson group come to be the TPA for doing this assessment? And how much were we paying them? And why are we not looking for a rebate or a refund on that payment when in fact they erred so much? You know, if you need an electrician, you don't hire a plumber. And if you need an IT assessor, you don't hire somebody who may be very good at tech support, but they are two different things. And I would like to protest spending my tax money and that of others in this Commonwealth, in this county, to hire people who knew not what they did and who produced another big lie. We are victims of another big lie in the fact that there's no dispute that they had produced erroneous information. We're not disputing it, and it doesn't sound like any of you are. So I would like to know how much we paid them and why there hasn't been any attempt to do a recall of that money for failure to a breach of contract, I would call it. I'm sure that there was an RFQ for them, and if they didn't fulfill their contract in the way that they were expected to, and numerous errors occurred, we need to get that money back and use it to fund the second person, or however the registry can make the best use of it. But I have great confidence that definitely it ain't broke, so we don't need to fix it. Let's stay on the wave of progress and not get behind the move to go back to the future in a way that might be good for the movies, but not for us as citizens. And I thank you for your indulgence. I just want to make one other request. It may be out of line. Tell me if it is. Many of you are probably aware that a very esteemed, wonderful person from our community in Randolph passed away April 21st. I'm referring to Kenrick Clifton. He was an amazing man. He was currently the vice president of our town council, but he was the one that when you said, can we do this? My wordsmithing would say, yes, we can, K-E-N. And I would ask the chair if he'd be willing to have a moment of silence in tribute and in honor of Kenrick Clifton, whose obituary is on our town website, townofrandolph.com. So I won't extrapolate anything from it, but I ask you to look at it and perhaps give a moment of silence in his memory and in his honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will defer to my colleague from the town of Randolph as to that. And probably if it's done, which I'm sure it will be done at our next meeting. Thank you for recognizing him. Are you satisfied with your presentation?
Am I?
Yes.
Well, you asked the wrong person because.
Well, do you have a specific question? Maybe that's a better way of doing it.
Okay, well, let's just say I may show up at another meeting But I believe you've been indulgent enough because out of consideration and an abundance of caution that they may get my home address, I will yield to the other people that are waiting and let them have an opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Randolph is well represented. Mr. Buckman.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Patricia Schmid did give, again, apologize if I have butchered your last name, did give a comment in the chat that she asked us to read into the record. Norfolk Registry has a trusted directed report on-site IT department. Keep this IT staff. They have long experience with the infrastructure technology, every aspect of the registry. They are trusted, skilled, and focused on giving their best accurate service. This IT department moves forward now in sync with the unexpected technical complexities of the Norfolk Registry. And I would also note that Ms. Smeeg has been with us since 5 o'clock as well.
Thank you very much for
And
Mr.
that's
Chairman?
all I got.
Just a quick question, what town is Ms. Schmid?
That's a good question.
Ms. Smeeg, if you would like to perhaps in the chat, tell us which town you're from. Is she still with us?
And Mr. Ryan Tosca, you are putting this into the record.
She apologized. She's out of hearing. I just sent her via text.
Okay, is there anyone else on the queue?
I do not have anyone else. If there's anyone else on the Zoom, she's from Randolph as well.
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I move we close the public hearing. That's appropriate.
There's a motion to approve the public hearing for Mr. Papp of Weymouth. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, point of
Mr.
order.
Polito, you're recognized.
Yeah, I was waiting for the public hearing.
So, Mr. Polito, the advisory board will have the opportunity to deliberate at the conclusion of the public hearing. Do you have something you wish to add to the public hearing or as part of the deliberations?
Both.
Mr. Polito, you're recognized for the public hearing.
Thank you. The comments I'd like to make is regards to the budget with the,
Oh, excuse me, I apologize. That was inappropriate with Robert's rules. Do you wish to yield to Mr. Polito and withdraw your motion?
Well, if he's going to speak to the sum and substance of of the budget, then we should close the public hearing and start debating the budget.
Okay, so Mr. Polito, there is a motion on the floor to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Boynton. Is there any discussion before we call a roll call vote? Hearing none, I'd ask Mr. Beckerman and Mr. Iantosca to call the roll.
Bill, you ready?
I am.
Okay. Avon votes aye. Bellingham. Braintree. Aye. Brookline.
Aye.
Canton. Yes. Cohasset.
Aye.
Dedham.
no,
What?
Adam votes no.
Dedham votes no.
yes,
Dover.
He said yes. Sorry, Mr. Beckman. Mr. Polito, are you voting no or yes?
no.
No.
I want to speak to this comment, you let me in too late.
Well, there's a motion to close the public hearing. It's on the floor. You're voting no. You do not.
I
wish to
asked
close-
to be heard before the public hearing closed, and you put me on.
No, the motion was made before you asked, Mr. Polito, and this is
But I
being
was
recorded.
I was on chat, Mr. Chairman. I was on
Let me verify the chat.
chat, waiting to be recognized by you again. So my vote is still no, and absolutely no.
He would like to speak. He said 2.5 hours ago.
2.5
I
hours.
believe you spoke to him.
But at that time, it was about deliberations.
I believe so.
So, Mr. Polito, just so we can be clear here, as we have members here who wish to know, do you wish to speak as a member of the Norfolk Advisory Board in deliberations considering the budget? Or do you wish to make a statement in the public hearing, recognizing that the members have not spoken in the public hearing other than to ask questions?
I'll make it at the public, I'll make it at the deliberation instead.
In the deliberations, okay, but your vote is still no, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, Mr. Beckman.
No problem. Okay, Foxborough. Yes. Franklin.
Yes.
Holbrook.
Yes.
Medfield.
Aye.
Medway,
Yes.
Millis, Milton,
Yes.
Needham,
Yes.
Norfolk,
Yes.
Norwood,
Yes.
Plainville,
Yes.
Quincy,
Yes.
Randolph,
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes.
Stoughton, Walpole,
Yes.
Wellesley,
Yes.
Westwood,
Yes.
Weymouth,
Yes.
Rentham.
Aye. 87.36.
Okay, thank you. So the public hearing is closed. At this time, I would open the deliberations on this and ask if there is a motion that anyone wishes to make with regard to this budget. Dr. Childs is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth Childs, Brookline. I would like to speak to this briefly and make a motion. As the chair of the finance committee, I just want to tell the whole board that we did recommend passage of this budget by a vote of 4-1. And so in that spirit, I'd like to, and the one objection actually is concerned about the implementation and the effectiveness. I want to make sure I say that correctly, the effectiveness and the implementation of the budget. So in that spirit, I offer a motion that I hope will incorporate those comments as well. So I move to approve version 5 of the FY23 budget as authorized by the County Commission on May 4th, 2022. And further, to ensure existing IT operations remain uninterrupted and existing service levels of staff and performance are met, we direct the county director to make a report to the County Commission, Finance Committee, and Advisory Board before their regular December 2022 and May 2023 meetings. This report shall include a draft strategic plan, staffing recommendations, an accounting of any obstacles and challenges, and a list of resources needed to achieve a fully functional, secure, responsive, and results-oriented outcome of the budget, including the Information Technology Department.
I second.
I'm sorry,
You have a second over here?
I don't know, second.
I think
Mr. Feinstein did, I'm sorry. My head's on the swivel. This motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I think Mr. Papp was raising his hand.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to amend the motion by striking the number 5 and inserting in place thereof number 4, so that we could honor the requests of the register to have control of the 2 FTEs. So in other words, the bottom line, the number amount would remain the same. Everything else would remain the same. As Mr. Muller mentioned, that the only thing that's different is the language around those 2 FTEs and to whom they report.
Okay, so Mr. Cronin's budget number 4 is what you're suggesting through the commission, from the commissioners. And is there a second to Mr. Papp's motion?
Second.
Second from Norwood. Is there any discussion with regard to the amendment? Please, Mr. Papp.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just first off want to recognize the Finance Committee. I understand that it's not easy. I know it's a difficult situation that, to make these numbers work. And so I applaud the effort. And I think very highly of the commissioners and the finance chair in particular and the rest of the committee members. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear. In hearing these deliberations and these discussions, excuse me, over the course of the last, I believe, year plus at this point, it just seems clear to me that the registrar has made a very compelling case as to why he would want to have control and direct reports from these 2 full-time staffers. We've got the Norfolk Aggie School, we've got the golf course and things like that. Some of us may golf, some of us may not. Some of us may have students in the Aggie, some of us may not. But one thing that we all share in common is that we live in a home. Whether that home is rented or owned, it goes through the register of deeds at some point. And so it's a critically important function that really does deserve its own IT person. Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, add any technological genius, I would never want that person in charge of an office that involves constituent services and homes and tax revenue, because there's so many different machinations that are involved in the registry that really having the requisite skills just really doesn't do the position justice in my humble opinion. So I really think it's critically important to have somebody who does understand how deeds are recorded, what that means, the various constituencies between the towns, between the CPA revenue. And I would just, go a little bit further to say that, I am certainly a change agent, love that. But I didn't vote for the Ripples group. I didn't vote for the Abrams group. I may or may not have voted for the Register of Deeds, but the point is that every 6 years, I have the opportunity to correct what I would see as being an inconsistency or a problem or what have you. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to realize that, we have, it's great to have consultants come in, it's great to have, people come in and tell us what can be done more efficiently, but, the purpose of government is not to be efficient. The purpose of government is to serve people through an elective and at times appointed, body, and individuals who serve in those functions. So, Mr. Padula made a great point, and my new colleague from Medfield made a point, we've got these 2 FTEs, so everything will be the same. It really, at the end of the day, wouldn't be the same. There wouldn't be 2 FTEs in the IT department at the registry. There would be 2 FTEs answering to someone else, in the middle of the county who would then go over to learn how the registry works and things like that. It just makes me extremely nervous to have such a critical function, a critical role, removed from the direct report. And we are the people who, hold the registrar accountable. And so I would urge my colleagues to support the amendment, to vote in favor of the only change is keeping the 2 FTEs and this CIO or CTO under the purview of the person who's elected and who's held accountable to the voters and to all of us. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, thank you, Mr. Papp. I do want to, and so just to go back over your motion is to amend just to substitute the budget number, like the previous iteration of the budget versus the current one?
Correct.
The only issue that I can see with that, I'm going to defer to my colleague from the Finance Committee, our Vice Chair, is that the language in this particular motion speaks to budget 5 and the kind of parameters within it needs to work, and the county directors need to be able to demonstrate that it is working. And I don't know. Please.
No, I think I was just gonna say, I think the amendment might have to be altered. If are we having discussion on the amendment right now?
This is discussion on the
Okay, all right,
amendment.
thank you.
not on
Okay.
the-
Yeah, I think the original motion requests reports from the county director, but that assumes that the county director would have the authority to deliver on those reports because the staff would be reporting to the county director. So in the version 4, that would not be the case. So I think the amendment would have to be substantially different. It would have to account for that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just point of order, as a moderator in my town, I suggest something to make this discussion go faster. The proper thing for you is to happen to speak and make a substitute motion, plain and simple. That's all. Then you can't amend what you're doing, go on the scope of our article. So we have a motion before us, we have an amendment, you're trying to amend an amendment. It's better to say, I want that. Substitute motion, adopt version 4. If you want to add your own things to that, you can. But it's a simple thing for a chair and a board to understand. You have one motion, and now we have a substitute motion. Anything, substitute motion first,
So I want to recognize Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan had raised his hand to speak to this. I just wanted to recognize him.
Yeah, I don't think the amendment is appropriate at all. I think it defeats the whole purpose of the motion, in my opinion.
Okay.
So I think that we have a motion, we should vote on it. If it goes up, if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. So maybe somebody wants to talk about this some more, and they're on the edge of which way they're gonna vote. I know what I'm gonna vote for, and let's go with the motion. And if it passes, it passes, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll go home, or we'll take another motion. So,
for one moment, please, Mr. Brown, if you don't mind. So, Mr. Papp, your motion is on the floor and has been seconded as an amendment. So what do you wish to do? Do you wish to continue?
So if we're gonna actually, if it's easier from a parliamentary standpoint and all that stuff to just vote to do a substitute motion, I'm happy to withdraw my amendment. I believe it would need a second to withdraw the amendment. And then I'd be happy to do a substitute motion to adopt the language that, the registrar is looking for. Is that
version 4?
Version 4.
Yep. So I think that would be the option. So
Okay, so then I would withdraw my amendment, and I believe that.
I withdraw my second.
okay, so back to, do you wish to make,
Yes, so, Mr. Chairman, if I could, and thank you very much to my colleague, Mr. Brian Braintree, for helping me along with this parliamentary procedure. So I would then offer a substitute motion to adopt version 4 of the budget as previously discussed and deliberated.
okay?
I will second it.
So the motion on the floor is to substitute the previous iteration of the budget, budget 4, for budget 5, is that correct?
Yes,
And
please.
that is what we'll be discussing as this particular motion now. However, and I'm going to defer to my colleague, my friend, because he's not my colleague, because he's a commissioner, Mr. Stady, for some moderator advice on this on Robert's rules, because a substitute motion would take this motion off of the table, is that correct? The original motion?
It's customary to take the substitute motion first, and then if it fails, you go to the main motion.
Okay.
Yeah, point of order. You know, it's customary to take the substitution motion first, when the substitute motion is like voting yes on something, and the other motion's voting no. So I don't agree with that at all. We had a motion on the table, we should vote on the motion. If it doesn't pass, vote on another motion. This ruling that a substitute motion gets voted on before the first motion, I don't buy that at all.
It's standard procedure.
I've never heard of it. I've been in politics a long time. I've never heard of the substitute.
It's what.
I'm not taking a
Mr.
position, I'm just trying to make it.
So why, is there further discussion on the substitute motion? Substitute,
So my only, I just want to carry my previous comments on the record.
no, absolutely,
Support, and that's it.
okay,
So I don't
so
have anything to add.
let me
It's my
do
thoughts.
this to Mr. Ryan's point. The original motion, now this is a substitute motion, to vote on the substitute motion, we can do that now. Is there any discussion about a substitute motion? No discussion being heard, we'll call the roll and we'll do that and then go to the main motion.
We have
Who is
gentleman
it?
from Dedham.
The gentleman from Dedham, Mr. Polito, you are recognized.
Thank you, thank you. Just
Good.
comment about. the whole
Mr.
budget.
Polito, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to recognize, because you're not here and I'm not sure of the sound and things like that. Anything you speak to is with regard to a substitute motion offered by Mr. Patton.
Sure, I will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just in regards to all the reports that came out. The Ames report came out with 63% of it, and some was wrong, so you couldn't check all of it. Now, the Whipple's report came out. Majority of the report says the IT should have the person at the registry reported to the registrar. Majority of the report did say that. And some said we should have extra employees there. And I think it was May 4th, the board accepted the report. And in turn, twice later, voted version 5 of the budget, cutting that report, basically ignoring the report of the Ripples report, which did say it should change. So I think they went into the meeting when the budget 5 was already done. The vote was already done behind the scenes to a 2-to-1 vote to make the change in version 5. I'm very.
Mr. Polito, not to interrupt. So are you speaking in support of the substitute motion?
Yes, I am right now.
Okay, thank you
I'm
very
very
much.
supportive of the substitute motion to back to version 4, how it was at our last meeting. I mean, the IT department is stationed at the registry, and at the commissioners vote to approve the blue paper that comes over with benefits like it was prior for the last 25 years.
Okay,
That's the way it should be run. All the registries have been run the same way. So I urge my fellow colleagues on the board to vote version 4 of the budget to save all this thousands of dollars we're spending in legal bills. Because if you don't vote version 4, we're going to be in more legal bills going down the road. I just feel that's coming. I urge my colleagues again to vote version 4, and let's go on with the meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Polito, are you inferring that there'd be no more legal bills if this thing were to pass? I mean, that's a quid pro quo.
No, I don't know what Mr. O'Donnell will do, but
That's a quid pro quo, which I don't think would be appropriate.
No.
Just saying.
I made the comment. I want on the record.
Okay, you're on the record for that as a quid pro quo.
Thank you.
So are there further discussions about this? Mr. Brown, you're recognized.
Paul Brown, Needham. So bear with me, the ball keeps bouncing here and I just want to try and keep up. So if I understand correctly, version 4 would not transfer funding for these positions.
Correct.
Version 5 would transfer the funding for these positions. Correct. So therefore, if I were to vote against your motion, Gentleman Weymouth, then, and that motion failed, then I would be able to vote in favor of the motion posed by.
The main motion, the original motion, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think, Mr. Ryan, I think, did you have a question? Or you moved to question?
I want to make a substitute motion. Make a substitute motion to pass the budget as recommended by the Finance Committee. That's it.
That's not a substitution.
I'm taking out all the language that she added.
It's not a substitute motion.
So I think that that substitute motion, and I would defer to an attorney who is a moderator that substitute motion would have to be taken up after this one has been voted. Is that correct?
Why?
Not bad for a funeral director, huh?
Why? Point of order, why?
Because I think a substitute motion has to replace an original motion, and this is a first substitute. So a second one, and I'm deferring again to Mr. Stady. Is that correct? Okay.
Point of order, there's been no second on the proposed.
Second substitute.
No, it was seconded.
For the
No, I
second.
didn't hear that.
And there's no second on Mr. Ryan's substitute.
No, there wasn't.
Right.
No, that's correct. There's a second on yours.
Just.
Yours is on the
Oh,
floor.
yeah, no, I just want to make a point of order that there's no.
Point of order. I think it's very inappropriate to make a substitute motion that is basically saying, if you vote on this motion, it passes, it's a yes. The substitute motion is a no, but you gotta vote on my substitute motion before you vote on the main motion, when it's the same thing. On this, I think it's inappropriate. And I think it's inappropriate for a county commissioner to say he's the moderator and that's the way you have to do it. I think it's inappropriate and it's,
In fairness.
I've never seen anything like it in politics.
So we do have, speaking to this particular substitute motion, we have our colleague, Ms. Healy Dipple from Cohasset on the line. And recognize her, please. And then Mr. Walsh.
Thank you all. Please let me know if you can't hear me. I'm sparing you all COVID as I speak. But I did want to deliberate on the motion and just share some points of consideration as I think through Cohasset's vote. And so I just wanted to really talk about 3 points on the substance of, I think, what's happening here. As everyone has pointed out, I think the security and the accuracy of records is vital. And this goal can't be understated for all the reasons the registrar stated, but all the reasons we know as it relates to cybersecurity. There's also a lot of evolution that's happening, maybe not in Norfolk County right now, but throughout America, as we talk about blockchain and cryptocurrency and as it relates to the registry of deeds. So there's going to be a lot of demands that are coming up, I think, from a technological standpoint. State of Vermont, for example, has begun to grapple with these. And so I think as we consider these steps, we should be thinking towards the future in terms of really making sure that what we're doing is the best for Norfolk County from the standpoint of being proactive and not just reacting to what's coming our way. I think it's really important that we protect the revenue of the registry. I do have remaining questions that have not been answered by the back and forth, notwithstanding the fact other people ask questions about user fees. I think that this is an important consideration in terms of where these positions ultimately go. That revenue is taxpayer money or could be taxpayer money. And so I think that is our fiduciary responsibility to make sure we completely understand that. And then as other folks have stated, one of the core purposes of the registry is to serve the public and meet their needs. I believe that there is a very strong need to have IT personnel in person at the registry, assisting with that. And one of the reasons I think that no one has really talked about, but was really raised by the Ripples group in their report, is that the registry is using Brown Tech now, which in my former life as a state mortgage fraud prosecutor, I have a lot of experience using all the different registries of deeds. And Brown Tech needs updating, and the considerations that the Ripples Group brought forward in terms of its local hosting, its customization are all very valid points. But to do a system conversion of that magnitude is going to be an extremely delicate and thoughtful process that the county, working in collaboration, is going to have to do to make sure that there's nothing lost. And so if ultimately Brown Tech is changed based on the Ripples Group suggestions, I do think that this is a consideration too in terms of how the CIO position and the positions underneath are staffed, because I've seen system conversions also go very, very wrong. And so I do think that it is worthwhile, wherever possible, to think through compromises to ensure the cooperation among all of us as we think through those really, really big changes that we're going to need to work together in order to serve the public if we're going to upgrade technology there too. So those are the points I wanted to share with the group as we consider these motions or motion.
So if you could, would you have a specific thought about this motion that's on the floor now on substituting the iteration of the budget from number 4 as opposed to number 5?
I would feel more comfortable having the personnel located on site, including the CIO. I do think that there are a lot of specialty systems that are unique to the Registry of Deeds that are not, for example, used by the golf course or the Aggie School. The Registry of Deeds is the largest source of revenue for our county. It's the biggest technology that our residents interface with. And so there's a lot of public pressure and demand for us to get that right, whether you're the registrar or the commissioner. And so I do think that having that CIO on site is appropriate. In terms of where the funding and the reporting lines come from, you know, I frankly have questions about that, whether the commissioners feel like you would be better able to oversee a conversion like Brown Tech as compared to the registrar. Ultimately, I would like, frankly, for all of us to work together in that regard, but that might not be feasible. So in terms of the on-site, those are my feelings. In terms of the reporting, I have more of an open question.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to recognize Mr. Walsh of Westwood, who's on Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say 2 things. First of all, with respect to this, you have to look at this motion to substitute as if FinCom came in and said, this is a motion for indefinite postponement. You must first address that, whether or not it should continue to be indefinitely postponed, and then you can get to the regular motion. So I don't have a problem with the substitution. As far as, you know, I do not recognize that an IT person has to be anywhere. In Aruba, they can be in the United States and they can function everything that's happening there. IT for what it's worth, can be done anywhere from just about any time. Understand, most of the people who are using the IT at the registry are not at the registry either. So that's why they're using the computer system to tap in to the IT. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I believe Mr. Polito is next.
Yes.
Mr. Polito of Dedham, you are recognized again. Tom, are
Thank
you
you.
there?
I just want to like to comment that I have been in touch with the Board of Selectmen in Dedham, and they are opposed to the change of the CEO going over to the county side. And the chairman of the board, who was the first deputy treasurer for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, saying in a comment to me, and I comment from him, that is totally ridiculous what the county is doing. He's the financial guy for the state of Massachusetts. So that's the comment from Lieutenant Dedham. But just one more comment, you know, when the commission voted 2-1, what was the reason why the 2 commissioners voted against the agent report? and accepted the, not accept the report, sorry, accept the report, why did not implement the report and keep the IT over at the county side? Can I have a commissioner, there's one commissioner who voted no, could he give a comment why he voted that way?
I have two pieces to that. One is, do you wish to recognize that there was a vote taken from the town of Dedham? And do you wish to recognize the individual by name who said that about, given his experience? We're not familiar with whom you speak.
Mr. James McDonald.
So James McDonald, and was there a vote of just for the edification of the members, was there a vote of?
I talked to
select
all,
board?
they never did an official vote, but I talked to all 5 of them, and they all are totally opposed to it, and so was the town manager.
Okay, so that's coming from you. We don't have an official vote, but you are recognizing Mr. McDonald as having said that directly, which will go on the record.
Yes, and I can prove the email, I can prove the text from Mr. McDonald. I have that.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure because we are putting this on the record. I didn't want to put you in a rough spot. The second part, I have to say that your question is out of order. Any vote that was taken with regard to the commissioners was at the commissioners. This is an advisory board meeting, and that would be something to be taken up with them.
Point of order, but they did recommend to the finance committee. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. It was their recommendation to the finance committee why they voted that way. So why can't we hear the commissioner's opinion?
Because this is not a commissioners meeting. This is an advisory board meeting.
Okay, let's see what the AG says again on this one too. You've been violating open meeting laws already. Just make the perfect comment. You've been violated, you get cited. You and Mr. Collins were violated earlier this year for open meeting violations. So tell me, I can't answer that question. Let's see what the attorney.
You're welcome to do whatever you feel you need to do, Mr. Polito.
I will, Mr.
This is
Chairman.
not a commissioners meeting, so I can't, you can ask any question of the advisory board you want, but it's not a commissioners meeting. We're not taking up what the commissioners have done. That's something you can take up at their next meeting on Wednesday.
Must be afraid to answer it. Okay.
I'm sorry?
Yep.
No, I'm sorry. What did you say? I didn't hear you.
He must be afraid to answer the question, that's all. Why? On the record.
I think they've already answered it on the record. I think it's on the meeting record, but this is nothing to do with the advisory board. So who else do we have, Mr. Butler?
3, Mr. Chair, that is all of the members on the Zoom.
So are there any other members present who wish to, our friend from Medfield, you're new, but you're good.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I
don't apologize. It's good.
The meeting and just listen and learn. For everyone here in the first meeting, I have a blank sheet of paper, which either means you're seeing me at my best or my worst, and you can make that judgment. I'm not sure which it is. Here's what I think I know from what we've talked about here. Version 4 and version 5 of the budget both have the same amount of money, so there's no relative cost. There's no relative cost improvement. Regardless of which of those budgets passes, 2 people will be at the Norfolk registry, or with the modification that first, the standard will be to maintain the level of service regardless of which way that goes. I've been more familiar with the arguments because of the emails that have come out over the past months in favor of keeping the operation with the registry. So because of my own background, I understand that more because I've heard it more, but even here tonight, I've heard compelling arguments for doing that. What I haven't heard is the arguments for why the IT department needs or should be consolidated. And I'm asking that question not to attack the idea. It's actually, I've been a consultant for 40 years. There are lots of reasons why you might choose to consolidate a department for efficiency reasons, for professional development, for versatility. I actually don't know what those reasons are.
Fair question, and that is germane to the discussion. So I would direct that to the commissioners and perhaps to Mr. Cronin.
I'll give it to you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the best place to find your answer with full detail would be the Ripples Group. The Ripples Group report was commissioned by the advisory board in December after recognizing the Abraham's Group report recommendations were not thoroughly, completely technologically informed. Ripples Group report had a full assessment done of all county operations except the schools. And they concluded that based on a number of different models, choose one of 4 different silos, that a division model trending towards a consolidated model, bringing all the technology into the commissioner's office was beneficial for the oversight of all technology. I think they recognized that the commissioner's office the last several months, years, for us moving more directly into the area that gentleman from Norfolk Calca had talked about earlier, recognizing that there was some progress made with respect to cloud-based service systems and the evolution of software. So I think at this point, Ripples Group is probably the best place to find the details on your answers to why the Commissioner's Office was best suited, but I think they recognize the direction the Commissioner's Office is taking with respect to technology.
Are there other questions from the advisory board? Mr. Brown and Needham, you're recognized.
Paul Brown, Needham, just to follow up on that thought, and I was having exactly the same questions in my mind as the gentleman from Medfield. What I've heard this evening regarding the Ripples report is what has swayed me. For the reasons that, and I'm not an IT person, but the limited understanding I have is that the fact of the locally installed software is probably the highest vulnerability from a security point of view. And so for that reason, I think I would support version 5, which would move us incrementally towards a more controlled environment in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other members? Mr. Calcutt, you're recognized. Then
Thank you,
Mr. Boynton and then
Mr.
Mr. Cap.
First and primarily, I want to identify that vulnerability was identified within the report. I do not believe that they highlighted any vulnerability concerns within the registry as part of that report. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, though.
Thank you. Mr.
There
Boynton.
was something else. I was
Oh,
gonna
I'm sorry.
say.
Go right ahead. I'm
Follow
sorry.
that. Secondarily, the model that we've talked about tonight, where we're discussing having a overseeing CIO in charge of multiple different operations, exists in every single large company in private industry today. And it's done successfully as well. It's actually not feasible for all these different institutions to have an individual CIO making structural infrastructure decisions for an organization and not having that be unified, not having a structured goal, a vision, and all of these things moving in the same direction. So the idea that this is so far reaching and this is so outside of the realm of possibility just doesn't exist outside of this room, or maybe just general government as a whole. That being said, from what we've heard tonight, or from what I've heard tonight in this discussion, it doesn't seem like we necessarily have a plan to institute that kind of direction, that kind of vision. We've heard that we're going to hire a CIO, and then when that person comes in, they'll let us know how all the other stuff is going to fill out. The concerns we've heard from the registry and from others in this group, it doesn't seem like those have been directly addressed. It's more of that we'll identify those as we get the right people in place. So from my perspective, while I would wholeheartedly support having a singular CIO wherever they lie, and then having a division set up where you have individuals who have the specific knowledge of the individual areas that you're overseeing in place, I would like to see something more structured presented as to how we're going to execute that, how we're going to implement that, and how that's going to look from a hierarchy standpoint before identifying a budget will direct us that way. So that's just my secret.
Thank you, Mr. Calcutt. Mr. Boynton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The county treasurer is an elected official. The county treasurer manages all of those funds that come through the county. The process of payments, the management of investments. Through you to county director, who is the CIO for the county treasurer's office?
The county commissioner's office, technology managers, supplies that support.
The model that is being proposed is one that will work. The county commissioners are also elected officials. The same people that elect the treasurer elect county commissioners. County commissioners have appointed a professional manager to run the operations of the county as a whole. County Registry of Deeds is a department within that. Now, certain respect to the register, he is a constitutionally elected officer, as is the county treasurer. Commissioners are constitutionally elected officers that have fiduciary responsibility for every aspect of county government under their jurisdiction. They have jurisdiction over the personnel system of the county. As a county employee 32 years ago, I can remember my appointment way back when had to be approved by the county commissioners. Not much has changed in that period of time. the context of a plan that's being put forth to go forward is one that the county commissioners, as duly elected officials as well, would not want to see fail. So an implosion at the registry of deeds obviously doesn't serve the county commissioners either. County commissioners, as elected officials, have an obligation through their direct staff to make sure that it's going to work well. This group, several years ago, and along the lines, has been pretty adamant about the establishment of efficiencies in county government and working to get to that point. And we've been working very hard as a collective group to do that, to function more like a well-run group and not an entity with little fighters. This is a step in that direction. If this fails, obviously the county commissioners and their staff are going to have to answer for that. I think that the county commissioners have the right frame of mind. They have the right expertise and overall administration of an organization. And they've hired a very professional individual to run the county on a day-to-day basis. So with all due respect, I think that this is a question not about the security of the system. It's a question of who's in charge. At the end of the day, county commissioners are in charge. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would speak against the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Pappy, I recognize you and Mr. Ryan. So you're aware of
I'll defer, Mr. Ryan, I'm curious.
We do have people, just to interrupt, we do have people who want to speak on Zoom. So if you want to defer.
I'll defer indefinitely to get other people to.
Okay, Mr. Ryan, and then Mr. Phelan, I
So,
believe is on Zoom.
Is version 5 having the centralized IT?
Yes.
Is version 4 having the registry have the registry people?
Yes.
All right. So a supplemental motion, all right? So it's like saying, should I jump in the pool? All right? Vote yes or no. The supplemental motion is, should I not jump in the pool? All right? So it's wrong, all right, to put this motion ahead of the first motion. It's inappropriate. I don't care what the county commissioner that's a moderator says, it's wrong. It's not a supplemental motion. It's taking a vote to say, no, to just ask the question a different way. It's not a supplemental motion.
Just a point of information, did you mean supplemental or substitute?
Substitution,
Okay.
supplemental, don't let my words get
So,
away the way it's
Mr. Phelan from Quincy, I believe, wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the rest of the advisory board. I've remained quiet for a long time. I've listened to all the information and everything, and I think I have a unique perspective. I was the CIO of Norfolk County. And I think one thing that's got lost in this whole discussion is the job was always that you were supposed to work with both the county, with both the registry. At the time, we had the sheriff's office was part of it. I helped plan their hires. I wrote the technology plan for the Norfolk Agricultural School. I worked with all the different departments, put in a new POS system in the golf course, put a new financial package with the county. We did the portal that you see today that's up with Brown Tech at the time. It was the state of the art. I will say it, looking at it now, it's getting a little dated, but it was everyone working together. There was a CIO. If you go out to other companies, I spent 40 years in the IT business. And I recently retired a few years ago as the CIO of Quincy, City of Quincy. We're losing that. If we don't have somebody directly there, they can't fix it. There will be people there. We're looking to get a CIO that looks at everything and keeps, and part of their plan will have to be the registry. That's the biggest part of it. You're going to have people there all the time doing the functions and doing this. And like the member from class has said, when we go to do this, we took legacy data from an old system and put it onto Brown Tech, and that was a major conversion. And any software you bring in, you're going to have to look at bringing in a major conversion. That's going to be part of it. So some of the things that are gonna happen are actually gonna cost the county a lot more money, both the registry and the county, and that's something that, you know, to have a CIO, somebody overlooking it, maybe in the early days, it probably would have been better that I worked for the county, but I worked for the registry, and that was the way the current register and the commissioners wanted to have it, and we worked and we put that in. I think we've lost fact that this is this magical place. Yes, it is. Technology is important. It's very important, but it's also important for the county to work together and do things together. I'm going to vote no on this because I'm going to be supporting the first budget. And I think that's where we should be going with this. You know, things from 22 years ago when I worked with Paul Harold to set up the initial portal and then went on with Register O'Donnell, we looked at a lot of these things. We put all these things together. It was a good package we put together. It was a state of the art at the time, but it's now getting a little long in the tooth. But I do feel that somebody can actually work as a CIO, like they do in every business, like they do in a lot of different cities and towns in the state, and oversee and put the thing together and still maintain the services. So I am gonna say that I am gonna vote no on this, and I'm gonna support the initial motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this motion? Here, oh,
Can I just?
the Finance Committee, I'm sorry,
I'm
yes.
sorry,
My bad.
Chairman. I just wanted to follow up with the gentleman from Medfield and Norfolk. I did ask Mr. Ennistat in his presentation about the risk issue. I just want to bring that up. That the risk really is, from their perspective, really is that we have such an old legacy infrastructure system. And should that fail, should they stop providing support, which is inevitable at some point, it could really create havoc. So it would be better. Their thought at the time was that we should be very proactive in planning strategically moving forward to prepare for that inevitability that eventually that brown tag system will not work. And the question, so then I asked a question about, well, shouldn't we do the strategic plan and then bring in the CIO? And Tom's response was interesting, and it made a lot of sense to me, and I'm not a tech person, I'm a doctor. But basically his point was, you want the person who's going to do that strategic analysis, investment, effective, looking at the system, to then be the one who is charged with executing their strategic vision. And I understood that from a physician perspective about like, if you don't do the evaluation, how are you going to do the treatment? You know, it's kind of the way I was thinking about it in my vernacular. And so, because I also think that it's a question about, we don't have an IT strategic plan. So that clearly would have to be operationally, one of the very first things that the CIO would be charged with would be, as fast as they can get going, they really have to work together. And that's a county-wide effort. And it's not, I think it's a bit of a false argument to think this is about for the county or for the registry, but really for all of it. I mean, we're all advocates for all the users of the registry and the county. And we want the IT services to be as enhanced as possible across the entire spectrum of all those services. And what the question is, how do we best get there? And we may have a window of time to do this, but we don't have an inevitable window of time because Brown Tech is running out of time. And so I think the idea of not moving has risks also. So I think that's clearly that's my opinion, because I've already put forward a main motion, which is to move forward. But I thought I thought you were raising really good questions. I just wanted to kind of share my my interactions with Tom Ennis in that presentation.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Is there any other discussion with regard to the motion on the floor? Motion on the floor is to substitute the original motion with a motion to go back to the iteration known as budget 4. Mr. Papp, did you?
Yes, just a final note, very briefly, I think that there's tons of enhancements that may or may not be able to be made at the registry. I don't know, I'm not the registrar. Whether it's introduction of new apps, whether it's moving things to the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. My understanding from the registrar's presentation earlier is that he's not close to these ideas. And that having a CIO who reports to him does not preclude any of that stuff. So, and then lastly, I would just make a note that, you know, it's not about working remotely, as the gentleman from Westwood had pointed out. We all know that anybody at any point or anywhere in the world can function in that role. It's the direct report. And I think that's really what the crux of the substitute motion versus the original motion is all about. So just with that, I would move the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Papp. Mr. Papp is asked to move the question. The question will be moved. Mr. Beckerman, are you prepared?
Sure. I'm just trying to, what exactly?
So this particular vote, is on the substitute motion. The substitute motion is to place the budget 4 iteration, which would keep 2 people as direct reports to the Register of Deeds, as opposed to the motion made by Chair Childs, which would the budget that was put forward by the commissioners and Director Cronin with the conditions on following up.
Point of order, not to correct you. Mr.
Please
Chairman,
do.
But the motion to approve budget 4 simply leaves the positions, if I'm asking this question, simply leaves the positions in the registry and does not create central IT.
Right.
That is 100% correct. If I
So
misspoke,
relative to the actual direct reports, that is not a matter for this board to make a determination on. That's still ultimately the determination for the commissioners and potentially legal counsel. So the way I understood that, to be clear, is that it simply is a movement of funds, not the motion would simply be leaving funds in the registrar's budget, not creating the centralized.
Correct. I got too far into the weeds. I thank you for the correction. Mr. Balder for Plainville.
Plainville moves to second Mr. Pape's motion.
Okay.
Move the question.
So the question, we've moved the question. It's been seconded. I don't think we need a roll call vote on that. I think we can move the question. I will ask Mr. Beckerman and Mr. Iantoska, are you available?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Beckerman will call the roll. This is on the motion by Mr. Papp. A yes vote would be to support budget 4.
Okay. Avon votes no. Bellingham. Braintree.
No.
Brookline.
No.
I'm sorry, Canton.
No.
Cohasset.
No.
Dedham.
Dennis, Dedham, yes.
Dover. Foxborough.
No.
Franklin.
No.
Holbrook.
No.
Medfield. Abstain. Medway.
No.
Millis. Hilton.
No.
Needham.
No.
Norfolk.
No.
Norwood.
Yes.
Plainville.
No.
Quincy.
No.
Randolph.
No.
Sharon.
No.
Stoughton. Walpole.
No.
Wellesley.
No.
Westwood.
No.
Weymouth.
Yes.
Rentham.
No.
No.
Bear with me, please. Could you, what were the Weymouth and Rentham votes, please?
Sorry, one more time.
Weymouth and Rentham, what were their votes?
Weymouth was a yes.
Yes.
Rentham, no. Rentham was a no.
Rentham is a no. I have 19.34 for yes. Fails.
So the main motion, the original motion is back on the floor to support the motion of Dr. Childs, which was seconded that, and then let's, if we could, please just reread the language to make
Reread
sure,
it.
yes.
Okay.
You know,
No. To approve version 5 FY23 budget as authorized by the County Commission on May 4th, 2022. And further to ensure existing IT operations remain uninterrupted and existing service levels of staff and performance are met, we direct the county director to make a report to the county commission, finance committee, and advisory board before their regular December 2022 and May 2023 meetings. This report shall include a draft strategic plan, staffing recommendations, an accounting of any obstacles and challenges, and a list of resources needed to achieve a fully functional, secure, responsive, and results-oriented outcome of county services, including information technology services.
Thank you. So my recollection is Dr. Childs made the motion, Mr. Feinstein of Foxborough seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion with regard to this motion?
Motion to move the question.
Hearing none, there's a motion to move the question. It's been seconded by Mr. Connors of Randolph, seconded by Mr. Conley of Canton. I would ask Mr. Beckerman, our clerk, to call the roll. Mr. Iantosca, are you prepared?
I am ready.
Thank you.
Okay, Amon votes yes. Bellingham. Braintree.
Yes.
Brookline.
Yes.
Canton.
Yes.
Cohasset.
Yes.
Dedham.
No.
Dover. Foxborough.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Holbrook.
Yes.
Medfield.
Abstain.
Medway.
Yes.
Millis. Milton.
Yes.
Needham.
Yes.
Norfolk.
Yes.
Norwood.
No.
Plainville.
Yes.
Quincy.
Yes.
Randolph.
Yes.
Sharon. Stoughton. Walpole.
Yes.
Wellesley.
Yes.
Westwood.
Yes.
Weymouth.
No.
Rentham.
Yes.
Rentham is yes. 76.53 yes.
Passes. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, I believe is just a report from the chair. So I have it in front of me, sorry. 9 o'clock, it's been 3 hours. Yes, so I just want to extend an appreciation to all the members. This has been a long process. It's been a process, particularly I want to recognize Dr. Childs for her leadership on the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee met several times with the commissioners on its own to vet all of the information that has been provided to you. And they really did an unbelievable job of putting together. So Dr. Childs, thank you very much for all you've done to kind of put this on the table and make sense of it, frankly.
It's a whole team.
It's a teamwork,
It's a
makes a
team.
dream work. The other piece I'd like to say is this has been over 3 hours of deliberations, discussion, debate, and I want to recognize it to your towns that this is the core of government, being here and being able to debate in a way that's representative of our constituencies, in a way that is considerate of one.
Lost them.
Does this mean we can go?
We lost them. Yeah, we don't have to listen to the chair's update.
Yeah, I think somebody pulled the plug.
Yeah, somebody hit end meeting instead of,
Yeah. I think the one, I don't see Norfolk County on there. My wife's saying the dinner's ready.
yeah.
I'm supposed to take her out, but this went a little long.
Yeah, this went a little longer. Yeah, I know. My wife says, you've been home for 3 hours and you haven't left that iPad. All right, well, I don't think he's gonna let us back in.
Advisory Board Executive.
There we go.
There we're back. The Advisory Board Executive Committee is to continue to move forward, much as the commissioners have, and make our jobs easier and lighter and more engaged. And so we will be receiving information, including a survey from the Executive Committee quite shortly. And I'm sorry, Mr. Boynton and then Mr. Padula.
Through you, I apologize, really quickly, will we still need the June meeting to vote on supplemental budget 5?
Capital. Sorry for that answer. Mr. Padula.
Just briefly, long process, a lot of work, a lot of time went into it. I want to thank the registrar, zealous advocate for the positions that he took. put a lot of time and effort into it, and I want to thank him for taking all the time, doing all the homework. His heart's there, he works like a dog, does a great job over there. Just want to thank him for a good presentation and respect his position, I respect him.
Thank you. Well
Thank you.
said. We'll make sure that that's in the record. Anyone else? There was a motion on the floor to adjourn. Was it Mr. Pat?
Yes, Mr. Ryan and I agreed on something.
It's debate. First, you can debate motions. That's the moderator. I know that. I know it's not debate.
Without objection, I would say this could be a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you on behalf of the public for not limiting us to 2 minutes.